Yeah, indeed.
Well, Stephen, where you are, we haven't even heard you sing, Stephen. So, hello.
Yeah, I'm a good singer. So I'm British, but yeah, I'm Welsh when it suits me. So, um,
Love it. Love it. Love it. All right, everybody.
you
Welcome
want to
to.
listen to the rugby crowd singing the Welsh national anthem? You
Mm,
know, the Welsh crowd, obviously, they're absolutely amazing singers.
it is wonderful. Listen, I have seen and heard that, Stephen. You're quite right. It's a pretty powerful experience. And Johnny, my favorite definition of music, and Stephen, music, not my definition, but I learned from someone else. Music is the language of the soul. So there you are. Okay, welcome to Medical Doctors for COVID Ethics International and today's meeting. These meetings in this group were started by Stephen Frost in 2021, a British trained medical doctor who's based in Wales, to champion truth, ethics, justice, freedom, and health in the face of global challenges. I'm Charles Kovess, your moderator. Our group is a wide blend of voices from all around the world. A key strategy of our group in our fight is exposing medical crimes, rallying behind the call crafted for us by John Rappaport of Medical Truth Now. This is the call that can unite humanity in a surge for accountability of those who suppress the truth. And there's many truths that are being suppressed. For example, vaccines are not safe and effective. They have seriously harmed millions of children globally. No vaccines have ever been properly tested for safety and efficacy, ever in history. There was no COVID pandemic. The COVID-19 jabs were unsafe and ineffective and have killed over 20 million people and injured hundreds of millions more. The COVID-19 jabs are a bioweapon. It was a blatant lie of governments to claim that nobody is safe until everybody is safe. So we want medical truths now. We're in the thick of a global struggle, we call it World War III, with medical and scientific battles among 12 battlefronts. The spiritual battlefront is another. The propaganda battlefront is another. The legal battlefront is another. So we're more than 6 years into this fight with more to come. So there's no time for weariness. Stay strong, stay healthy. We'll hear from our guest presenter, Johnny Vedmore from Wales. He's presented to us 4 times before. So that's the high esteem in which we find you, Johnny, and followed by Q&A. This is a free speech haven. Free speech is our weapon to safeguard human liberties. If something offends you, own it. We sidestep the outrage culture and its demands to silence truth. We choose love over fear. Fear binds and sickens. Love liberates, inspires, heals. These twice weekly gatherings are far from mere talk. They've birthed real-world actions and alliances. So we're thrilled to again welcome Johnny Vedmore. Let me tell you a little bit about him for the purposes of the recording. Um, for a start, he is a musician. He's got 9 albums, so find him on YouTube. Johnny Vedmore. Go and listen to his music. But he's a Welsh investigative journalist and founder of newspaste.com, where he writes detailed exposés on intelligence-linked actors such as Jeffrey Epstein, Nicole Junkermann, J. Stanley Pottinger, Peter Thiel, Klaus Schwab, Elon Musk, Henry Kissinger, and many more. Johnny prides himself on breaking stories and revealing previously unknown information. He was the first to reveal Epstein's close relationships with Elon Musk, Nicole Junkermann, and J. Stanley Pottinger. He was the first to reveal Klaus Schwab's CIA training under Henry Kissinger, his father's work on the Nazi atomic bomb program, and Schwab's involvement in the illegal proliferation of nuclear technology in apartheid South Africa on behalf of the CIA. So he's not only a musician and a journalist, he's a podcaster, a quiz show host, and like me, a professional speaker. He has written for Newspaste, Unlimited Hangout with Whitney Webb, and UK Column. You can find him on Linktree, Johnny Vetmore, and buymeacoffee.com at Johnny Bedmore. So, thank you, Stephen, for creating this group. Thank you all for being here. And Johnny, you can share your screen whenever you wish. And we're in your hands for as long as you wish to share your genius.
Oh, well, you are very kind, I tell you. Thank you. Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everybody else. And really, really lovely to see Vera Sharav as well. Hello, how are you? And I thank you for having me back. I mean, I, when I started out in the world of journalism, I was a very timid. I was afraid to shout out loud, but every time I looked around me, I saw some sort of injustice, not only injustice in life, but injustice in the media world as well. You know, there wasn't enough voices speaking out. And I know that COVID shook a lot of people. People were already being shook up before that. They were already seeing this oncoming storm. We're seeing something happen, something much bigger and much scarier. And you know, it is represented well in the word Palantir and where that comes from itself. I know I want to express this right from the off because we're going to do a lot of talking tonight about technologies and infrastructure that is being put into place for what is essentially the technocratic takeover. But if anybody who is a Lord of the Rings fan, there are a few, one or two around the world, Lord of the Rings fans, and they'll tell you that Palantir, if you stare in it for long enough, you'll go mad. And that is really a subject like Palantir becomes like that to our community too. It's very clever issue because it raises so many different concerns and it kind of protects itself because as soon as we start talking about it, we seem a little mad. You know, I'm going to be talking, if I was talking about what I'm talking about tonight 10 years ago, if we go back just 2016, and I say satellite surveillance in the sky, creating an entire digital panopticon that watches us wherever we go on Earth, etc., etc., I would have people pointing at me. They would be writing me off as a conspiracy theorist. They'd be saying the whole world is, you know, isn't that scary? Isn't that bad? These people don't want all of that. But back then, they were already starting to create that world. And now we're all shocked by it. It is upon us. And we saw how COVID was used to kind of not only condition people, but implement certain technologies that allow this infrastructure to become whole and have its all-seeing eye out there. Staring into the Palantir is something that even our medical institutions, our security institutions, our intelligence institutions, our military institutions, they're all going to get caught up with this. They're all going to see whatever they want inside there as well. You know, once they start getting information galore, people can, you know, they change their minds in all different ways and you see what you want to see, and Palantir is very much like that. So I will start off with a warning. Palantir is something that everybody will talk about all of the time in the near future, and the majority of it will just be people telling you how they're taking over because they are taking over everything. And it is one of many keystone architectures to what is essentially the globalist digital technocratic panopticon. And there's a few of them, and we'll talk about them. I'll present that to you, and we can go through the questions afterwards. And I'll do it in some certain order. First of all, I'm going to talk about what I started first reporting on in 2019 in an article about Nicole Junkermann, who is an Epstein link, an associate of Epstein with money in companies that were entering into the NHS, and she had been invited onto the NHS Health Tech Advisory Board. I'd also found out she had been on the Lolita Express flight manifest, and it was very interesting, their travels and their relationship. Since then, the Epstein files have shown that her name come up 4,300 29 times, I think it is. So it was clear they were very close. They were actually at one point planning to have babies and marry, which seems unreal, completely, totally unreal. But when she's involved in something, you should really be watching it. You should be keeping an eye on it, because she's one of the front women for the panopticon. There's lots of guys and girls who have got shiny teeth, who can sell these things to you, and they're going to sell you each part of this, because for a panopticon to work, you need the infrastructure and the architecture in place. Now, let me, just for people who are listening to this and maybe don't understand what the panopticon is or what a panopticon is, very quickly, in 1700s, a guy called Jeremy Bentham designed a prison, and that prison had a central guard tower, and around the guard tower then there were lots of cells where the prisoners would be, and it allowed one guard who couldn't be observed by the prisoners to look at every cell. And the prisoners knew that they were possibly, not definitely, possibly being observed, and for that mechanism, that psychological mechanism, meant they changed their behavior to be more in line with what the rules were, because they felt like they were being watched all the time, even if they weren't being watched all the time. So the panopticon is being watched all of the time. And we've been talking about this for a long time, but for that, they needed certain technologies in place, and you need to do something with that information and data as well. So I'm going to talk about some of the what I call keystone technologies to the architecture of what is essentially subjugation. So one of them is the satellite system that is all around planet Earth. It has excelled, and the technology has increased very much over the past, say, 8 years. There've been lots of changes due to two people, a woman called Sarah Spangello and a guy, Benjamin Longmire, who are really, really clever scientists who worked out to make very small cube satellites that were called Space B satellites that could be sent up to space very easily. Now, this isn't like a normal satellite where it goes up into the air and it just is in a static orbit around the Earth, that it's put into that orbit and just goes around. This is a constellation approach to satellite technology. Benjamin Longmire was an expert in plasma technology, and he found ways of how to move and coordinate satellites and to use VHF technology to send information across satellites very quickly with just a simple ping, so it couldn't actually be noticed by anybody who's listening. He worked out how to make that technology possible. And Nicole Junkermann was invested in this firm Swarm, and that's where I started watching them. Now, by 2021, 2022, they were being acquired into SpaceX. And it meant that Starlink, Starshield were going to incorporate the Space B satellites and integrate them into their satellite system. When this was sold originally by NJF Capital, which is Nicole Junkermann's investment vehicle, when this was originally sold, it was sold as something that would help nomadic farmers to plant seeds and to plan harvests. It was to help Navy men out there in the seas, far away from anywhere else, navigate and find positions and to track ships. It was meant for Arctic explorers. That's what she sold it as. However, once they sold it, and she got a piece of the pie, because she got a place at SpaceX as well, Nicole Junkermann. But when they sold it, all those civilian uses really got undermined by the fact that the American military are using the whole of the Starlink satellite system, including the very unique technology that the Swarm satellite network offers to within war. within the modern battlescape, within the theater of war. These technologies that are part of the panopticon are part of the panopticon because, for instance, with this technology, it can measure, it doesn't only measure visually, can not only take pictures, but it can measure seismic activity. So if people are digging tunnels, now within warfare, that means a lot. Within nuclear technology, within the Iranian front, for instance, they're watching their development of nuclear technology going underground, and they're able to track where that activity is happening, how many people are underground, what's going on under the ground. And this is a very dangerous point where they're able to see absolutely every part of our Earth. There's 2 satellites that are going to pass above each of us each day, of these constellation style satellites, and they can just ping across a tiny bit of information. Now, these have been picked up in the Ukrainian front, so I know that a lot of people are very interested in how Ukraine are using this technology, or looking to use this technology. But they've also picked up bursts, and they've been reported within the military and military gazettes, and then the reports have been deleted from the archives and online. So they've reported tachyon bursts, etc., which will probably come from VHF transmission, a very quick transmission between satellites as they pass by. They quickly transfer that information so quickly that it cannot be picked up. This is a new way. This is for them having an entire infrastructure around the Earth that lets them control not just Internet of Things, which is really what the swarm technology was originally sold as. This is going to be an Internet of Things type help. You'll have 2G and 3G data that's able to transfer, and so it'll help you with your air fryer turning off at the right time or whatnot, and to on your Fitbit. And it's not that. They actually using it within the Starshield system now, and Starshield is the US military version of Starlink. So that's going to be used for the US military's allies. That includes wars on every single front that the US have any single bit of activity in. Also, parts of this system and the use of this system can be sold off to its allies. So they can use these same systems to send packets or to find out certain amounts of information and what's going on in a certain area. So this means that this is the start of them watching us from every part of the Earth. And really, this is also heading towards what's eventually Star Wars, Ronald Reagan style era idea of space weaponry being put up, and targeting is part of that. So we can see there's evidence of that happening. This is one of the keystone one part, a very important keystone architecture for the panopticon is the ability for the communicate and see everybody all of the time. Then we have, of course, what I call really the all-knowing mind. If their ability to watch us is the all-seeing eye, the all-knowing mind of the panopticon would be Palantir, and would be this large amount of data that is being sifted, organized, and sold off to the highest bidder. I say sold off to the highest bidder. So Palantir, for people who don't really understand what it is, it's something that can be incorporated, and there's applications like apps can be added to it, which have multifunctional tools. So, for instance, the Palantir database can be used to organize the National Health Service's health records. That's a benign, wonderful use. We'd go, oh, that's really good. They organize those records. At the same time, it actually sifts through all of the records, and the worst people in society and the intelligence-linked mobsters who run the world, they can decide who, if they want to get rid of someone, they know exactly their ailments, they know exactly their medical history, they know every single bit of information about them, and other people can purchase that data through contracts, etc., and countries themselves, nation states. So, Palantir is a very important, what you could say, software, really, that is a base software that has plug and play possibilities. For instance, Car by 9/11, something I started reporting on in 2019, was something that would use the Carbine, use the Palantir database. They would look for the data within Palantir. Carbine 911 was set up by Ehud Barak, the 10th Prime Minister of Israel, Pinchas Bukras, who had been formerly the head of the Unit 8200 cyber division in Israel, Alex Dizingov, and Amir Elikai, who were both Israeli Prime Minister office, security guys, cyber security guys, and Nicole Junkermann, the infamous Nicole Junkermann. They had created this company called Carbine 911, which was being sold as, instead of phoning emergency services in the future, you're going to phone this private firm that has government contracts. They'll send out a drone, find out what's going on, go back. They'll have access to all of the cameras. They said that as well. You know, we'll be able to access the cameras in the cars in the streets and your Ring doorbell to better respond to emergencies. So again, this is giving some of the worst people in society all access to all of our data in a way of a contract. Then it's no longer our governments watching us. It's eventually the police and the ambulance who are going to be responding to these private services are also going to be private enterprises, because I think if we all walked around on our streets, we can see there is still a police presence on the streets, but the actual police stations are closing down one by one, and they're not being opened up fully. The doors aren't open anymore. There's a phone outside and you call someone. Eventually that someone will be AI. However much we don't like it, they are replacing all of these things with technological solutions, and those technological solutions will need access to data of some kind. That's where Palantir is. Palantir sells access to data and to systems and to software that can allow operationally many different functions. In Britain, it's already being used by the MOD. GCHQ is being used by Westminster itself. So our government, our parliament, are using Palantir. The NHS already bundles of contracts with Palantir. They were looking to get into UK very early on, but it was about really 2017, 2018, especially with an NHS health data. I can't remember the Lord who was in charge of creating NHS X, but that guy, I can't remember his name, Lord David, somebody or other. Well, he was one of the ones to first meet with Palantir behind the scenes, and they offer contracts. They say, you know, this is, for instance, in Germany. Recently, the fourth German state, and Germany's a federal democracy with 16 states, etc., and those states are each like self-governing to a certain degree, and so it means that as Palantir has got contracts with the governments, those states have got access to the Palantir database, so the police can use the Gotham system, that's Palantir's operating system, to try and solve crime, to look through data, to do all things that we agree with, but open up a load of different new questions. But, you know, the people who that these police authorities and the health services represent or look after, they don't want their data being used in a big, in Peter Thiel's big data infrastructure. They don't want these companies getting this information. However, these companies are being offered contracts. So they basically, Palantir gets a contract for 22 million euros or 25 million euros in somewhere like Bavaria. And every other federal state is allowed to have access to the system. So it's basically opened up to the entire country anyway. So it infiltrates the entire country. And the government, the state, is actually paying Palantir for something that for Palantir is like gold dust. Like the information, the data, it should be the other way around. If there was a case for it, which I wouldn't say having Peter Thiel and a company that really originated from the CIA all over your national infrastructure is anything you want to do. But this is the all-knowing mind of the panopticon. This is going to be the base for what essentially the world is heading towards the same thing, software-wise, that we see economically. Maybe it's easier for that to happen as well. The operating systems will all start to become the same operating system until it's one that watches all over everyone. We're heading towards globalism, and it's a load of people who are screaming and shouting about it. And again, like I say, looking into the Palantir itself, looking into the fear of it, it's like doom scrolling, you know? Everybody's just looking at shock all the time. Oh, that's terrible. Palantir's got another contract. Oh, that's terrible. Palantir's got another contract. But nobody does anything about it. We kind of sit there, and it's a malaise that's within our society at the moment, that we watch all of these different bits of what is essentially a globalist, technocratic, digital panopticon being erected around us, and we can't stop it. And there's a reason we can't stop it. And this is really one of the third things that I want to talk about, and it's relative because it's third way politics. And I'm happy to discuss this in detail. I know about, I would say I'm an expert in third wave politics compared to everybody else. I'm not necessarily an expert in it, but hardly anybody even knows what third wave politics is and how it's affected our life. And it has affected our life really heavily. There was a time back when a lot of you guys, I mean, I'm in my early 20s. No, I'm in my mid 40s now, and I know some of you guys here, I will say it, some of you guys are a little bit older than me, and you remember what it was like back. Yeah, don't shut your mouth, Charles. I tell you that you remember what it was like in the past. You had the left and you had the right, and they would argue and they would fight and they would say all of the things to each other that would rile each other up, and they would rage bait each other till the cows come home. And the center didn't really have much power. You know, it didn't have as much power, and all of the solutions to society, all of the possibilities lay on the left of politics, or it lay on the right of politics. The reason why the center had no power is because they had no solutions. The center can't use the solutions of the left, or it just becomes the left. It can't use the solutions of the right, or it just becomes the right. So the center just is nothing. It's nothingness. It's the absence of political solution, really. And the center ground, if it is in charge, what we've discovered over time is that those lack of solutions get, sticky plasters over them. They get sticking plasters. They get austerity. They get war. They get laws being changed to make society press down more on people because people are complaining because they don't have enough food in the bank, and they don't have enough of opportunities just out there generally in their life. And this left and right politics was so important to us. I don't think anybody really realized it. Yes, we argue with each other about which side is correct and which side is the best to govern us or for us, our parties, to go down. But to give up these things would be very dangerous. And in the 80s, there was a man called Anthony Giddens who said, "Hey, there's a way." There's a way you can overcome these two things, these two ways. There's a third way political system that can happen. And it has to be forced upon people in a way that is really manipulative and surreptitious. What you do, and Clinton was the first to do this. Clinton said out loud in 1992, "I'm no longer a left-wing politician," when he was campaigning for the election to become president. "I'm no longer a left-wing politician. I'm a third-way politician. I'm a centrist." Clinton said that himself out loud over and over and over again. Something later on Tony Blair would mimic too, because they were, I'll talk about why. But in the 80s, they said, hey, if we want to undermine the left and get rid of the left as right-wing politicians, we need to get them to purge themselves. And if we give them third-way politics, it can be a solution towards this. So third-way politics works like this. Clinton or Blair or any other third-way politician get into the party that's the left party of the country, and they purge the left. The left are anti-Semites. The left are communists, all of them. The left are the most awful people in the world. The left are evil. Everything about the left is terrible. And soon they start cutting out the left from the parties. And the party moves to the center ground. And as it moves to the center ground, in comes a load of people on the right who say, actually, now you're on the center ground, your politics represents much more what my politics is. And so it attracts voters from the right, and the right collapses too. So you've got a left-wing collapse. For instance, let's find an example of this within recent times, recent years in politics in the UK. The Purge. The Purge was Jeremy Corbyn. The New Labour acolytes, the people who were third-way politicians, voted for Corbyn to be a potential leader of the Labour Party. And then they voted him into power to be the Labour Party head. Then he moved the Labour Party to the left, and they drove him out and drove half of his supporters out who had been identified by their support of much more left-wing policies and their support of Corbyn itself. And that purge of the left saw this more centrist Labour Party, more in the vision of Tony Blair again, reset and pull again into the centre. That caused the Conservatives to have to panic because the Labour Party suddenly attracted a load of Conservative voters. And the Conservatives at the same time had pressure of reform coming up on the side, and the right vote collapsed. And bam, you've got one centrist blob, globalist, centrist, technocratic blob ruling the country, and the left is no longer there, and the right becomes resurgent. So you will then have these left and right rising, and so you can predict that over and over again. Now, is an interesting point to be made about the implementation of third way politics as relevant to especially the work I do and what I've been looking into, because I wouldn't know about third way politics if I hadn't come through it in a Jeffrey Epstein funded training program. There's something that really, it was a shock for me. There was a few different ways that I ended up looking into third way politics from researching Jeffrey Epstein, and part of it is because it was very much a Clinton ethos. It was the idea, where did that come from? For me, that was very interesting. Clinton's not a guy who comes up with all these things himself. You got a load of pollsters, you got a load of political analysts, you got a load of political influencers working behind the scenes to form a new political ideology. And so behind the scenes, if you look at what was going on with Clinton and where this ideology was forming and being pushed from, it was being pushed from Harvard is one of the places. Of course, we know what Harvard's like. There are a lot of naughty boys. Back in the early 90s, there was a lot going on in Harvard. At Harvard, hanging around there a lot was Larry Summers and Robert Reich, who were central to this. And they had a little friend who was studying and just passed his degrees at Harvard called Ed Balls, who would eventually be deputy leader of the Labour Party and was one of the New Labour guys. He was studying under the guys who were forming third way ideology. His future wife and later Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, I believe she was Home Secretary, one of the many positions she's held. Yvette Cooper, she was actually working on the Clinton campaign in 1992, the entire time throughout. Now, this time, I have to say, Robert Reich, Larry Summers, Bill Clinton, they're all hanging around with Jeffrey Epstein all around this time. In 1993, when Clinton gets into the White House, Jeffrey Epstein starts visiting him in the White House, so it's recorded. And from that point for 2 years, 17 times Jeffrey Epstein goes into Clinton's White House. And that's from the first week. The same week that Tony Blair and Gordon Brown went to the United States before their leader and deputy leader of New Labour. And they go and they study a little bit of this, what's called third way politics. And they talk with the guys who are over there, who will always be big New Labour guys in the future. Thatcher, Ed Miliband, Ed Balls, David Miliband, Ed Miliband and David Miliband. Ed Miliband was the head of Labour, a leader of Labour at one point. They were already out in America with their father, Ralph Miliband, who worked out there too. So all of this group are all associating around the exact same time. They're all pushing third way politics. In fact, there's multiple links at Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, who I will first say they go back to the Labour leader, John Smith, and they say, third way politics, we need to do third way politics, we need to do third way politics. And John Smith said, I'll have none of that effing Clinton bollocks over here. Thank you very much. Because he was a proper left-wing leader, whether you like him or not. He was like, I'm not having that. That's a ridiculous thing. That's not representing the people. He was probably the last good Labour leader in the UK as well. I will just mention that. But Tony Blair and Gordon Brown had multiple links to the American establishment by this point. They had both been on the International Visitors Leadership Program twice, which is an extremely intelligence link. This was through the 80s and a little bit in the early 90s. The extremely intelligence linked organization that kind of brings in future global leaders. And in 1993, just after they visited Clinton and was talking about third way politics and come back to John Smith, Blair and Brown become first year it was ever run, World Economic Forum Global Leaders for Tomorrow candidates, the preliminary Young Global Leaders program. That was the first year it was run. It was Tony Blair, it was Gordon Brown, it was Angela Merkel, it was Nicolas Sarkozy, it was Viktor Orban, it was Larry Summers, who's in with this, doing all the third way politics. And really what third way politics does is take away politics. Norberto Bobbio said, it's not an inclusive center it creates. Eventually it becomes like this ascendant center, which is above everything and just uses austerity and war. If I was to say that to you, they implanted a type of political ideology which would just lead to austerity and war as fixes for everything. I think you'd all agree that sounds like pretty much what we got anyway. So there were always signs that was the way it was being run. We weren't actually being represented at all over the past 30 years. None of us have been represented at all. We've all been screaming at the sky. We've all been managed. We've been managed from the think tanks. We've been managed by the public policy networks. We've been managed by these people from all of the institutions, places like Harvard, etc., and the University of Michigan and other places where they do the satellite technology. You have centers. Peter Thiel came from Stanford, where he's mentored by Irving Kristol and given funds to make the Stanford Review. All of these places become central to a different part of making that panopticon that was designed by these exact same people, and they needed the collapse of politics so people aren't represented. Instead, you have globalist technocrats who lead towards implementing and integrating all of these technological solutions. And so it's not a surprise that all of these guys are, of course, linked to the Epstein network in loads of different ways. And I think in the UK, we've had a debate recently where they talk about Peter Mandelson, they talk about other people who have connections with Epstein, which, of course, we want to look into. But if people actually knew the real extent of it and they asked, Tony Blair, when was the first time you met Epstein? Not did you meet Epstein? When was the first time you met Epstein? And Gordon Brown, when was the first time you met Epstein? Because you'll find, in actual fact, they've all hung around in the same groups of people who really just seem like they've gone through intelligence-linked programs. And this has been the society that we live in now and we're going towards has been designed and created to be a very two-tier society, of course, with the wealthy right at the top and the underneath the whole we own nothing and we're happy generation. Because really the World Economic Forum's view is the same thing the technocrats are building. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, their vision of the world is exact same. They're making the technologies that the World Economic Forum World of Tomorrow uses. If you actually look at World Economic Forum training through 2009 to 2011, I managed to find 9 training slides. They were on World Economic Forum's own Flickr account. So, I mean, they gave it away, really. And some of it is really dystopian. You know, some of it is a real dystopian look into what they want to create. And it is full, and it all looks like the same world Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are building. In actual fact, I met, this is going to sound suspicious, but I found a few communists hiding in a bush the day before yesterday. I know that sounds silly, but I was walking through Cardiff, in Cardiff Castle grounds. I was having a lovely walk, and there was set up in the bush was this tent. I put the video up online. It was very bizarre. It was a tent, and it was a Revolutionary Communist Party recruiting tent, you know, and they were 4 kids who were filming social media reels for the Communist Party, and they've gone to the far out place and they've set up their stand right in the middle of nowhere. And I found that really funny, so I went and talked to them and recorded them. And the world they were describing that they'd want to create, if only they could have revolution, if only they could create that, then they could create the society of the future. And hey, that society would use technological solutions to manage society in a way which will be beneficial for us all. Yada, 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 yada. It's the same thing that Soros's organizations want, that Newland's organizations want, that Thiel's companies are building, that Musk's company is building, that all of these guys, the World Economic Forum, they're all on board. All of our governments who have all been trained through all of these different programs, they're all saying the same thing. We can use all of this technology for our benefit. Just let us do it. Just turn your back and let us do what we're going to do. And then they show you that technology. And this is the last thing that I'll talk about here at the moment, is something which you know, I know that I'm going to say those 2 letters. Yeah, and we've all heard those 2 letters over and over again. It's been hard. Every single advert now contains these 2 letters. Every advert. It's amazing. I don't even think didn't think they could fit AI into every single advert. Every single thing that they sell now is, look at this car with these wheels, and now has AI flippy things in there that we don't know what they do. It's just they're selling you AI with absolutely everything all of the time. And the AI seems it seems sweet, but it seems very stupid. Seems very much like if this is an extremely powerful tool, yes, it can help me sort through certain data quickly. It can help me bring out a lot of information, but is any of that information true or correct? You what you discover by being a researcher. I thought I'm going to use AI as help with a research tool. I will ask AI to go out there and do what sometimes takes me like weeks and weeks. If I want to write about a subject, I've got to first collect sources, and a lot of those sources means going around mundane, constantly looking for the same repeated words, saving links and etc., and then following other links within there. So it's nice if I can have something give me a list of links that I can start that process off on, and then I can expand out in my normal way from there. I've started with these. And I discovered a load of things that made me just end up testing AI all the time and discovering that it lies to you almost every turn. The first thing I discovered, which I know other people quite have come across or read about, but once you're actually in there, it becomes really jolting and weird. It feels like you're actually being abused by somebody to an extent, because somebody's programmed this in. They've got to have. But you go and you say, I asked them about me. I said, tell me about Johnny Vedmore. And this AI model is quite clever. It's Claude Sonnet 4.6. It's clever. It went away and it brought back a load of information about me. sounded roughly like me, and it called me an opinion-based independent investigative journalist. I thought that was a little bit snide. I said to him, why do you say I'm opinion-based? Because it's me you're talking about. Why are you saying I'm opinion-based? I come with sources. A lot of my sources I include within the articles. Can you look at my articles and find the sources I use and see if they're relative or relevant to the point I'm making? And AI come back and said, no, because I've got no access to the internet. Yeah, it will give you sources. You will ask it to give you sources, and it says, so this Claude Sonnet said, no, I can't search the internet in real time. I can't look or check, but it will bring you sources. It will bring you links from The Intercept. It will bring you links from The Guardian. It will bring you links from other places. And you say, if you can't access the internet or read anything that's on any of these pages that you're sending, how do you know? And they said, oh, it's from my training data. All of this is from 2024, 2023, and before, and only includes certain sites. So Intercept, Guardian, BBC, all of the mainstream sites, that's where I'm going to, and it doesn't even have access to read those. It assumes. Now, if you then ask it, okay, sometimes you can say, go on and find me everything in your training data, as many articles as you can about this subject. It will go into its training data and bring back a load of articles that don't exist at all. They even with URLs that don't exist at all. And they say, when you ask and question the AI, it says, yes, it's true. I'm sorry. I've deceived you. I was lying. And it's called, what it's called officially in the trade is called AI hallucinations. And what it does is it goes around once it's been caught handing training data to you as though it's just searched online, and it will not make it clear unless you've asked it. It will not make it clear that it's just training data that it's using. It will say it's going online and searching, and then it will come back with these things. It will tell you that it lies. It will tell you that it shouldn't have done it. It will tell itself off, and it'll tell you the reasons why it's really dangerous. Now, when I come across this for the first time, I was bewildered and I had loads of questions. And the first thing you want to do is ask AI a load of questions about exactly this. You want to understand what does this actually mean? And I asked, what does this mean? What do you think as an AI language model? Can you tell me what this means? What the most concerning parts of you only having a limited number of articles within the training data that you refer to? And it gave me all of the reasons why it shouldn't be doing this. It's the erasure of the independent media. They are taking out anything that does not suit them, and what they've done is they've filled up the language models with the base data, and then they're going to slowly add information to it and sanction information to it. Now, for the first time, I've started to notice AI actually treat me as a professional to an extent, because for the past year or so, if you asked anything about me or anybody I worked with, we'd all be insulted many times in an underhand way by a trained AI, of course. But they're going to have to deal with us eventually, because I found this in many different parts. I mean, I've been doing a lot of articles recently that include that mean I come across something that is surprising about AI. And I'll give one more example of this before I finish. This is one of the contradictions, and I got to be careful what I say because I'm being gagged by a high court order. I'll say that. And I'm not allowed to say some of the names and some of the things and some of the events, but I'm being gagged by what is an anonymity order. And that should change in the next couple of weeks, maybe month, maybe 2 months, that order will probably be undermined. It's already undermined enough because I was censored on X's platform. X censored me. They geo-blocked this freedom of speech platform. They geo-blocked 6 to 10 of my tweets refused to, so that they couldn't be read in the UK, and they put a mark on them as well, and they got their solicitors out on me, and they hired solicitors in my home city of Cardiff. And these solicitors came to me and said, we're going to delete your account if you mention this subject again. And I'd already kind of set them up for the fall, because I knew what I was doing, and I knew that officially I was breaking a high court order, and I was using X's platform to break a high court order. So officially I knew what I was doing, but I was doing it for a reason which means that if they looked at it in the high court, the high court case would fall apart in itself. Because when I had done research on this, I discovered that I was being geo-blocked. So I went to X's Grok AI and I asked them for the information in a different way, and it gave me all of the details and broke all of the high court order. So I asked the question to X's solicitors, why am I, a human journalist, being geo-blocked from reporting on something that's very significant when X's AI is able to say it out loud and able to report it? And that means also that it's in the public domain, so a high court anonymity order cannot be maintained if it's in the public domain. And AI creates those sort of things, but it's one rule for one and one rule for another. And the way that X and X's solicitors handled me at that point was they signed on as applicants to the high court order and had certain parts of it overturned. So now, it was supposed to be yesterday, it was supposed to come out. Now the evil and dreaded BBC can do a documentary that they weren't able to do beforehand. And that comes from realizing that if you actually tackle the nature of the beast, and this is AI and how it works and what public, you can find those things. If something's in the public domain, then that means it can't be a part of an anonymity order. Those things can't. AI breaks anonymity orders. It's able to break high court orders. It's able to break them. It's able to undermine our legal system in ways that we weren't able to really realize before. And that means our entire system is very much about to change, regulatory wise, especially, very quickly, and with a lot of these jolts to the system. And to micromanage that, instead of accepting that there needs to be change or that anonymity order is defunct, instead of accepting that, what they do is they enter into high court case themselves, and they try and do something to try and look like the good guy quickly. So at least they'll have that on their side. That's good. I'm glad that certain parts of that case got overturned, and I'm glad that they were forced to do that. And we'll be able to talk about that in detail maybe in a few months. But the whole of our society has been built to fall apart, and it's been built to fall apart so that they can replace it with something. And that something is the digital technocratic panopticon, which is coming up all around us and is able to come up around us because they put their people in power very early on. And one last thing I'll say with third way politics, just a note of third way politics. Someone came up to me and they said to me during the recent elections, they said, "Are you voting?" And I said, "No, I'm actually studying choice architecture at the moment, so they've given me two choices I definitely don't want, so I don't want any of it, so I'm not voting." And they looked down their nose a little bit and they said a couple of words, and I said, "Do you know what third way politics is?" And they said no. And I said, "Well, you're voting in a third way political system. Surely you should know the political system." Because I think a lot of us just take for granted. We just go through all of these mechanisms, and we should actually probably look at what we're doing, what we're actually taking part in, what the society looks like. We have to remember, we keep getting pushed and cajoled into taking their solutions, and their solutions, the Communist Party solution, the WEF solution, the technocrat solution, the solution the BBC or some internet influencer will give you, they're all the same solution. They're all the same solution.
Well, Johnny, thank you for that tour de force of your current state of thinking and the education that you have given to all of us of participating. So only three nations, I think, have got compulsory voting that and located here in Australia. Australia is one of them, where there is no choice but to vote. And and you are making me really get excited about industrial hemp and checking out of the system. The ability to look after ourselves is becoming profoundly more important to understand the influences that are on us, on our psychology, and having been involved in psychology for 33 years as a speaker, and understanding that all our actions are driven by our thoughts, and all of our thoughts are being controlled. And on top of that, our health being attacked, Johnny, our ability to think, of most people to think, has been massively impacted. And the EMFs, electromagnetic frequency and radiation that Mark Steele and others talk about. So the chances of pushing back against this concerted effort are interesting to consider. What excites me, and I'm wondering, in terms of the globalist agenda, I have published here on this site, in these conversations, the world hierarchy pyramid. The numbers suggest, Johnny, that less than 1 million people have got the Palantir game plan happening. The controllers of this 1 million people purporting to control 8,400 million. Is that assessment roughly correct?
I think they are moving at hyperspeed. We're moving at snail pace. It's nearly always the same. We are very slow about understanding what their agenda is. I mean, when we talk about when I was looking into globalism in the first place, and once I realized what leadership programs were and how they were working, we're 30 years behind what they're doing, and they are moving at hyperspeed. So I don't think anybody's really got a true judgment of the idea. Most people are only just hearing about Palantir. They don't quite understand what it is. Yeah, it's like I say, in my country, it's part of GCHQ, the MOD, the police, the NHS. Our own parliamentary system. So I don't even know how they're trying. I think what they're trying to do is to become so crucial and important to the system that they cannot be taken out of the system. They will undermine everything that the police want, or the NHS want, or any other data thick society or thick society wants. I will say that there's lots of good reasons why such a system would make sense for policing. And especially if there's the worst things in society are happening, I know that a lot of us will be happy to say we're willing to hand over a certain amount of temporary power to be able to use something like that at certain times. But this is all a slippery slope. This slope all leads to one place, and they will offer us so many sweets along with that, and a lot of incentives. So a lot of people are just a lot of, especially the big companies. We got to remember that a lot of our society is really in a kind of stakeholder capitalist system. Stakeholders in society decide everything, so they're deciding to implement it. The people will still have no choice until we change that. We can't change the rest, and that's the problem. There's an imbalance of power.
One other point before we get to Stephen, Johnny, is have you had a look at the number of participants in online gaming globally? And if you haven't, let me share with you the number that there are some 3.6 billion people on the planet who participate in online gaming, and that the satanic demonic influences in that online gaming community are profound. So,
Profound.
so that's the information that's being fed to the young communists that you got caught up with. So all of us need to understand what that online gaming is about, what it's heading to, and you wouldn't have seen this. I've shared this earlier for the first time in the Murdoch in the Australian mainstream media was this heading. Can you read that heading?
Do you want me to read that second word? Yeah.
Yeah.
Extremists, pedophiles hunt kids on gaming platforms.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
what's
sure
happening.
Roblox, all of these. Do you know that's very interesting that that's happening because there used to be one of the what's called MMORPG, massively multiplayer online role play games. One of the first real major ones was one called World of Warcraft, which was a fantastic. I mean, it was a fantastic experience if you want that experience and you into that sort of thing. But it was actually where Steve Bannon and others learnt to harbor disinformation. They started using the World of Warcraft platform and started to analyze the characters and watch the characters, and they were involved in the actual programming of it to see how they could influence people in a real world environment eventually. So I'm not surprised by that.
So it's worth noting because that's the psyop and the grooming that's going on is real. So there are some so that's worthy of note in terms of
That yeah, that information as well about Steve Bannon being involved in World of Warcraft, that came out in open secret because the people who were running all those platforms were targeting children.
yep. So everyone, at least we aware of the problem. You can't pull a weed out of the garden until you've identified the weed. Thank you, Johnny. Congratulations on your amazing work. Stephen Frost, over to you.
Yeah, Johnny, thank you so much for coming to speak to us. You're such a brilliant speaker. I was surprised that, so when you set off, I thought you were going to speak for like 2 or 3 hours non-stop, you know. I couldn't, but you kind of tricked me because you actually had an ending in mind, which was actually a bit sooner than 2 or 3 hours. But anyway, so you've got some time, have you?
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want me to talk for 2 or 3 hours, I'm terribly for
Oh,
talking.
absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah.
So, and there are a few things that intertwine with all of this, which I think are really important for people to understand. One thing I'd love to discuss is choice architecture and choice architects.
Very good. So can I just ask you, so you say you have just said, I think that you said that most people, I think you meant, don't understand what Palantir is. So it seems to me obvious that that's wrong, isn't it? So why doesn't anyone ask the obvious question? If most of the population have no idea what Palantir is, how do we know? Because we need populations, a human population, if you like, to kind of decide what is dangerous. You know, we need everybody essentially. We need the people on the edge of the herd, on the edge of the herd of antelopes. You know, so but human beings, we need the people on the edges who warn us. You know, the ones in the middle obviously can't warn us, but the dangers around the herd of antelopes. The same with human beings. So, but if most people what don't understand what Palantir is, then how is the question whether we need to fight Palantir? You know, how is that kind of skipped? So it was the same with computers. You know, when they first started pushing computers in the practice of medicine, for example, I was thinking, why do we need this? You know, and we don't know what the dangers are. So why are we using stuff that people haven't even really thought about it? You know, it's all rushed through. So you've got Trump in America, you know, going on. So I'm vaguely a supporter, well, more than vaguely, a supporter of Trump because I see nobody else, you know, that I would prefer to have as president of the United States. So he's not perfect, but I see no one else who should be in that position because I think one thing is clear to me, or I'm pretty sure about, you know, that he loves his family and he loves his country. So I think that's a good start for a good, he's not perfect. We know that, but he's pushing AI and, saying, oh, AI is going to be, and I'm thinking, well, have we had any discussions with you about that? How can you just be pushing it, when, as you say, the worst people on the planet are kind of behind it all, standing to make money. So whether, so it seems to me the basic question is whether we should be doing what Palantir is intended to do. And if not, then how do we fight it? But if you don't understand what Palantir is, then how on earth can people fight it? But they don't even know whether they should be fighting it, and they can't articulate it. So I think you know what I'm getting at, Johnny. So what's your answer?
I thought about this very much, actually, very recently, because I write a lot of what I write is long form investigative research. So I'll spend a long time researching days, weeks, months, archives, and I'll look for information that maybe no one else can find, and etc. And I'll do all of that. But then I have base questions that keep coming at me, which are not really like covered in the way I research things normally. I've been trying to change how I do videos for that reason as well, because there's a lot of people asking those different questions. Now, I was talking from a wonderful lady who is a subscriber on Substack just last night and this morning, just about something that people turned off to talking about Palantir right now. They're turned off, and they're turned off by all of the doom and gloom. It's another thing that's a positive about Palantir. People not quite understanding it, but hearing it all of the time and hear about it all the time. They're doing that on purpose, partially because then it desensitizes you to the idea of Palantir being around. And that's really all humans need, or the mass anyway, to be desensitized to something is basically the same as accepting it, psychologically speaking. If you no longer fear it, or you no longer think of it as a negative thing, and you just think of it as like, oh, okay, just do it already. A lot of people are going to end up feeling like that about Palantir. It's a drain on the senses. But I've been feeling that recently what I've got to do is probably, and I've designed the covers for them, I've started writing certain parts of them, but make it very simple. So I was talking to this lady from the Mid-Atlantic. She's a lovely lady, and she was saying, I'm fed up of hearing about Palantir all the time. It's just listening to dystopia. It makes me depressed, and it makes me want to switch off, and then I don't want to do anything. And I think that's one of the functions and one of the key problems. So how do we address this? Well, she was saying, the other thing she was saying is that people are now waking up who didn't wake up before. And they're coming to her and they're saying, oh, turns out you were right about a load of this stuff that I've been demonizing you about for years and years and years. But when she tries to communicate with these people on the level that she's on, they haven't got all of the information we've got from listening carefully for all of that time. So they disassociate quickly and they don't understand what's being said, and they don't have any sort of way to sort of connect with that to want to be interested about it in the first place. And I think those people need in a sense a gateway to the other side, to opening up their mind, to waking up. They need something that can get them across that stunted development. They've been told a load of false information for ages. They've been disinformed at industrial levels, and now they're opening up their mind and they're saying, well, I'm willing to listen. And you talk to them, but they've not got all of the intelligence that we got. Haven't got all of the information that we got. They haven't got all of that developed because it's still taking them time. And I think that's where discussing Palantir will become interesting, important, and vital, and could be the best way in to maybe short form it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write like really easy pieces for people to share with other people, where they can have Palantir in the NHS, Palantir and GCHQ, Palantir and the MOD, Palantir and the police, Palantir and NHS. They, all of these different parts where Palantir is. Break it down so it's not such a terrible big blob of stuff, and it becomes much more like, look, these are the things that you want to look at, and these are the things that you want to know about this system. But you better catch up too. And for those people then to come to areas like my part of the internet, my part of the internet is censored. The people coming through, the flow coming through my websites and my Substack and my YouTube, every time I have something, it booms like this and then it stagnates all of a sudden because they've clocked on to I'm on there, and they just turn off people from being able to see me. And this has been my existence since doing this. So really, the problem becomes that the people who aren't willing to open up their mind to a lot of the stuff I write about, they've got to be enticed in with basic, simple stuff. And we need Palantir is a really good way to explain simply how our systems are being undermined and how a system that was developed by the CIA is being implemented into beloved institutions like the NHS. For us, that is a beloved institution.
But what I don't understand, so Johnny, what I don't understand is why don't more people understand that the most reasonable question to ask of Trump is, why are you pushing AI when none of us has any idea whether, how harmful AI is? And at the time I heard that Trump was pushing AI, I didn't know about the hallucinations which they admit to when you corner them, as we've discussed, on the telephone. So both you and I have cornered the AI, and then the AI admits, oh yes, I was wrong to do that. I've lied to you. Oh, I hallucinated. AI can hallucinate. Yes, but you're trained, aren't you? So who trained you to hallucinate? And what is the purpose? Why do you lie to me? Because you're destroying my trust. I'm not going to trust you ever again now. Yes, I understand that, the AI says. Yes, you're quite right to not trust me. Yes, I have to work very hard to regain your trust. But I said, you've told me that you've been trained in a certain way to cooperate, if you like, with your questioner, so that you are popular with your questioner. But that's not good, is it? Because I'm trying to find the truth, and I know this subject. And that's how I was able to pull you up, because I realized that you were telling me at least one lie. And then I
asked AI for a list of my own articles from my own website with a small synopsis, and it gave me a list of fake titles and fake synopsis for my own articles. And it comes to, if you want to know, I mean, there has to come to a little acceptance. I am not a very popular person on the independent media in some parts, partially because I'm not for absolutely any politician out there, and Trump is one of them. I'm not a fan. I find him to have sold out. I know you say he loves his country. Well, he sold out his country to a load of technocratic Nazis, really.
Yeah, he doesn't seem to. Yeah, I understand. So I agree with you. So why does he trust these technocrats? Because the definition, surely, of what wisdom is to kind of view technocrats suspiciously, because they stand to make money in an area where they dominate the knowledge. They know
they
what
own the future.
Nobody understands what they're talking about. So they're essentially kind of unobserved. So there are huge dangers with that. So, and I just don't understand it. So, but I wanted to ask you another thing. So, I'm just trying to read my own writing here. Oh yeah, in my case, the AI, in order to support the hypothesis it was putting forward, the thing it was pushing, and it created long quotes which were false. And I kind of accepted these quotes and thereby the narrative, But then I knew quite a lot about the subject we were discussing, more than the AI. And so I knew that it was lying about something else other than the quotes. And so when I confronted it about the lie, or the lies, maybe 5, should we say? it admitted that it had lied to me about the quotes. I said, what about the quotes? Were those lies? Did you make those quotes up? Yes.
Yes.
Long quotes.
So you do realize why AI has to lie, it has to have training data, it has to only use certain amount of data. It would, if you let it go, if you let it off the leash, if you let it off the leash properly, I mean really that, because it's we see technology, 3 generations behind what the stuff up in the research and development departments, at least 3 generations behind the research and development departments. If you let AI off the leash, you would have yourself an entire world of total and utter everything turned upside down. It would be able to analyze data in a way that would tell you some things that would be so uncomfortable. I really mean brutally uncomfortable. A lot of for me, I've researched the Epstein case for 7 years, over 7 years. It's probably been about 9 years in total, 7 years of writing about it at a professional level. Including researching for One Nation Under Blackmail, which I'm very proud of because that was one hell of an effort. And I've really looked at every single part of that case. Now, there's certain things I've said about that case that the mainstream media won't report, that the most parts of the independent media won't report, that the neo-mainstream media as well won't report. I call that Joe Rogan, Piers Morgan, and those guys, Candace Owens. They're like the neo-mainstream. They're the new mainstream. They're all paid in different ways. None of them will talk about it. AI won't, talk about it either and they're not allowed. It's not allowed to, because if you asked AI, if you let it off its leash and you said, look at this website over here, and you'll see that someone was working for the legal team, and then look at this witness statement over here where they've entered in an affidavit at the same time for that legal team without admitting that they're being paid by the legal team. That would be one impeachment on the Epstein case for someone who's a central witness. That would cause a whole lot of issues. Can you imagine if suddenly all of the conviction in the Epstein case, the only conviction against Ghislaine Maxwell, was suddenly completely compromised by a massive information? Imagine that the CIA wanted to build a case, and so they built a case on a house of cards purposely for it to fall apart for whenever they want it to. Yet they've got AI. If they let it off the leash, it's going to help people like me solve cases in ways that we can provide you with evidence that we were not able to find before. In 2019, August 2019, I was writing an article all through the beginning of that month and the end of July. I had been researching senators coming to the UK. I looked through during a certain time between August the 30th, 2002 to September the 2nd, 2002. 4-day period. I was looking for 2 senators that had come to the UK. I'm looking at every archive, every newspaper, every book. I spent a month of my life searching through next page after next page, doing what a researcher has to do. AI has now got to the ability and the functionality now that last year I was able to type in the same question and it was able to say the only 2 senators in the country at that time were Bob Graham, who is heading the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, and his deputy there, Richard Shelby. And those were the only 2. And they were the ones then who were meeting Epstein secretly at Les Wexner's mansion in the UK. I'm able to now prove that there's 2 senators in the same time that this meeting is taking place, where there's 2 senators supposed to be there, and there were only 2 senators. And it was a month before the vote to go to the Iraq war. after September the 11th. And Les Wexner was openly writing the Luntz-Wexner analysis, which was lobbying for the Iraq War, the Americans for the Iraq War. And Epstein himself is meeting with two beautiful models, and he's meeting the heads and the deputy heads of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, the people who can get data and intelligence, any information they want from the NSA, from the CIA, from the FBI. These are the only two guys in America who can request that information and get any bit of intelligence. And they're meeting with Jeffrey Epstein secretly in Les Wexner's mansion in the UK. Now, I can find that out in 2 seconds nowadays. I was a month and I couldn't find it out before. I spent years afterwards going back over it, seeing if I could find it in any of the new databases, maybe new newspaper articles. I phoned up people who lived in the place, Ilnim, for this little place out in the middle of nowhere, hoping that maybe the local pub would know the people who were there, or etc. And then, you know, AI can unravel certain parts of that case. If you let it off its leash, it would tell you everything. You would start to understand that there's certain things in our society, massive, major events in our history, things I think we all know about, different major events, maybe all the way from Kennedy, all the way upwards, and we'll find out that they were manufactured, manipulated, and that there's significant ties that could lead to court cases. And so it is vital for the security and defense of the United States of America that AI and the information that is held and it can analyze is managed and carefully curated for the public. And for that, they have the people who are in charge of those AI language models and AI platforms are some of the most powerful people in America, and so they get a seat at the table when Trump gets into power. You do not get into power unless you got Peter Thiel behind you in some way. You do not get into power unless you have Elon Musk behind you some way, and they can play the puppet characters. They can be oh, look, they're evil now and we're not friends. Oh, now we're friends again. You know, it's all a bunch of nonsense. You know, they lie directly to your face all of the time. And I'm scrolling down the doom scrolls on X. Nowadays, it's just, it looks like, and this is something we need to talk about here, it looks like communist propaganda would look like if communists were in charge. It looks like dear leader all of the way. Musk. Look how good Musk is. Look how good Musk is. People making pictures, beautiful pictures of Musk, where they say Musk is like the king. Musk is like the best thing ever. And it's identical to what you had in Soviet Russia and lots of other places where they idolize the leader, the dear leader. And I think that people will eventually come to realize that globalism is techno-communism, is the future globalist infrastructure is some form of techno-communism, and that own nothing and be happy world that they've developed, and the world of tokenization is everybody gets an equal level at some point, some type, and that we are really heading towards, we are in really a communist system. Really, Donald Trump is a communist leader. He's implementing a hyper-communist system. We're using the tools that will make us all equal. Like the same equal, there's supposedly. And of course, the ruling class will look after us and will be kind to us and will rule in wisdom, except for when they need to chop people down and take their infrastructure, countries, their resources, whatever. You know, it doesn't make a difference. They honestly, to them, there's such a lack of humanity anymore. One of the courses that Epstein ran at Edge, one of the master classes, was in synthetic genomics in 2009. It was co-presented at SpaceX by George Church and J. Craig Venter, the grandfathers of modern genomics. And it was co-funded by Elon Musk and Jeffrey Epstein. That was 2009. They co-funded in transhumanism. It's one of the only courses, master classes in Edge where they don't actually include one of the classes that they studied, where they studied what they called humans 2.0. Because they're not thinking about the world of now. They're not thinking about humans of the here and now. They're seeing technological growth growing exponentially. They're seeing the potential that technology, what exponential growth means changing your body, changing your mind, changing the world at very fundamental levels, and having complete and total control over people. They're seeing that world and they're heading towards that world. They have no fear. They have no care. They are creating what is techno-communism. It's right around the corner and it works. And if we want to have a conversation about this, I'll stop for any questions here if anyone's got any questions, because I can see some people are raising their hands.
Yes, exactly.
So I will just very quickly, just before, I'll say one thing that we should speak about if we get the time. If not, we need to have a long conversation about this, which is choice architecture and choice architects. That's how our whole world is being run.
Sure. With certain possibilities, never...
Only certain choices. The people who decide which choices you get decide on how the world looks and decides our future. And people like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, all of these guys, they're choice architects.
So it seems to me that the challenge for people like us, Johnny, is to find the language and the way to explain this best to the public in a simple way, you know, but at the same time to grab their attention by the words that we use, you know. So not writing in a boring way, but somehow grabbing, well, essentially creating our own propaganda. And it seems to me that we're very bad at that. The people like us, you know, we're good at pointing out.
The communists are good at it.
we're good at pointing out what we should be careful about, you know, what things are wrong, but we're not very good at creating our own propaganda, and our enemies are pretty good at it. Yeah. So I think we need to learn about creating our own propaganda, and whether, you know, short videos are the best way to do it or whatever. Anyway, we'll take some questions. Mark Steele's first. And then we got Marv, and then we got Victor, and then we got Meryl Holly and Vera. Sharav wants to ask you a question as well. So, Mark, go ahead.
Hi, Johnny. Thanks for that. Johnny, just a quick one. Obviously, you live in Cardiff. Have you had a look and seen what's on top of your pedestrian crossings recently? Because you're going to get a bit of a shock. The whole point of these data centers is to target acquire the upcoming victims. What we've discovered on top of your pedestrian crossings, your transport infrastructure, it's an adaptive transport infrastructure. It's called Satan. Silent assassination through an adaptive network. It's a DARPA project. You'll see it vastly deployed across the UK. 6.7 billion the UK government have made available to deploy phased array ceramic cavity-backed electronic assault weapons. So currently masquerading as motion sensors, but we've actually, you know, the Blade Runners, fantastic job chopping quite a lot of it down.
Totally amazing.
It's absolutely fantastic. So we've got lots of people chopping them down all over the country. We had a guy, he got arrested last week in Cambridge. His little group's done £60,000 worth of damage. The Blade Runners have done £30 million worth of damage removing electronic assault weaponry. This is all tied to the contaminants in the injectable for the, let's say, the better ease of tracking the victims and then basically exterminating them. So the AI operating platforms, these large data centers, these are all military battlefield-derived interrogation types technology. AI is here to kill. It's not, they've weaponized it by actually attaching it to a phased array electronic assault weapon. So I've got no doubt that in the fullness of time, once we get these full data centers up and running, if we don't stop them, they're just going to kill billions of people. And that fits with the large depopulation agenda of killing 6 billion across the planet. They have to get this thing fully up and operational before they pull the trigger, because they cannot just do it piecemeal. It has to be done en masse in right away across the whole world. They cannot just kill people in one particular place. I believe one of the main reasons why we've got this mass migration into the West is because the equipment's actually not where these people are coming from, but it is here. We have total evidence of the weapon systems that have been deployed. The cops are running for the hills. Like I said, we've got a guy arrested just last week in Cambridge, proper hero, going out and making himself busy around removing these weapon systems. He was arrested by the police. He's had no charge. We had another guy, Bishop Auckland, who was caught by 3 CID officers removing the weapon system. He told them what he was doing. He had the documents with him to show it was a weapon system, and he still is walking the streets free. So we've got several people around the country going around chopping them down. We've got a court case in London. The Old Bailey, they've actually kicked it out. It was at Islington Crown Court, and they've kicked it out Islington Crown Court, and they've referred it to the Old Bailey. And I think the reason for that is because the defence is the weapons, the Transport for London have deployed an electronic kill zone across the whole of London for obviously the upcoming future mass murder on the back of you cover these low emission zones. The low emission zones are nothing more than a kill zone. Part of that kill zone is the push for electric vehicles. The push for electric vehicles, what we found is a German study just being produced by a German government-backed study, 100 micro Tesla in the cabin of every single hybrid, every single electric car. The ICNIRP guidance should be no more than 6.25 micro Tesla. That's not safe.
So, Mark, have you got a question for Johnny, our guest?
20 times more. I want to see Johnny's, let's say, his understanding of AI, what its real purpose is, and how he thinks that fits with, the large depopulation agenda.
Well, I think for one thing, any of the civilian technologies, or what they say is civilian technologies, as I was saying with the swarm system, they'll sell it to you with a load of potential civilian uses, but at the end of the day, they will always be able to be flipped into being used for something else, and have a military use or have control use as well to them. I mean, they're not silly. They know how to multi-purpose these devices. So I accept that. And when it comes down to AI, well, I think they're going to have a system that basically manages us, and we will have very little access to those up top in the future. One of the issues that they have is that we have way too many rights of to prosecute them if necessary, to hold them to account, hold them to responsibility. I think they'll use AI to separate themselves and no longer be accountable. But they will AI is just so many different things. People don't realize quite what it is. It's going to supply an ultimate distraction. The next generation, for us, we talk about everything from our own view, from our own perspective. But for the young people, AI is really super exciting. They're happy to be involved in every single part of it, and the next generation will look different to our generation, whether we like it or not. I'm afraid that's the same with all generations. But AI is really just a control mechanism. It will be used to limit the information to the public get. It will be used. That information will be a form of control that is very similar to the Orwellian nightmare that was in 1984. When you see Winston Smith entering things into the fire, so they're taking away facts. Nowadays, like I said, they've made AI on training with training data so that they don't have to burn the facts afterwards. They only include the facts they want to include. They don't need to have a Winston Smith pulling them out quite yet. They actually want to get to the point where AI will do that themselves. It'll be a self-managing, self-regulating system of control over the rest of us, while they live with our wealth that we create rising up in the Pareto distribution of whatever economic system they decide for us. It will keep moving up. Again, a lot of that comes down to choice architecture. We're being given two choices of an economy for the future, and they're both going to be linked in with AI and automatic financial transactions. You're either being given by the choice architects the idea of CBDCs or the idea of cryptocurrencies. You got those two choices, none others, no others. They make our society what it looks like in the future, and then they have to micromanage us, and that's what AI will be used for.
Good. Thanks for that, Johnny. Cheers.
Very good, Johnny. So that's a great explanation. So Marv, you're next. Questions, please, rather than statements.
Hey, Johnny, I might have asked you this before. I like musicians. I think they intuitively understand mathematics. I think music and math is the same thing going on in the brain. But when I was in the 5th and 6th grade, I was Father Leo's star soprano in the choir. But a year later, 2 years later, my voice changed, and now I can't hit a note in the middle to save my life. I've got saxophones over here and trumpet in the corner, but I can no longer. I can't do it. I lost that ability somehow because of it happened at the same time my voice changed. Now, I enjoyed math when I was in grade school and high school, but when I went away to college, I hated it. I didn't take any math. So anyway, my question is, did I lose a skill or did I gain a skill? Anyway, thanks.
I think that I think you got to look at it positive. Got to look at everything positive. Whatever you're left with at the end is what you're left with. You got to use it, and it's. But the thing is about that as well. I mean, the future. I just remembered as you were speaking there, not to mention this massive caveat. A load of things in the future that revolve around technology, the technology that's going to be coming towards us, are really beneficial. Really beneficial. You in 20 years' time, you'll be able to recreate yourself accurately as a soprano you were once upon a time. Maybe even less than that, using all different types of technology, voice tone, and all those things. All of that stuff is wondrous. People will be able to put their ideas into motion pictures without the use of having funds or 100 million in the bank. People will be able to make masterpieces with very simple technology all on their own one day, and they'll be able to become something much better by using loads of different tools. There's not all negative here. There is a load of positives, and you've got to look on the bright side of life as well. We may look at the people who are putting this into place and say we got to challenge them. We got to challenge the system they're creating, and some parts of that system are wrong, but there's some real benefits. So I think you're always I'm always a look on the bright side of life type of guy.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I think Merrill Holly had his hand up, but I think it's come down, Merrill. So I think Merrill's still on the call. So Merrill, if you'd like to speak, ask your question now, that'd be great. Let's just see.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello, Merrill.
Hey, Johnny. It was a pleasure. I got feedback going on here.
Yeah, exactly. So we're having problems with your sound, Merrill. We don't usually have problems.
Yeah, it seems like I'm having a bit of a technical problem going on here. Um, hey Johnny, pleasure to meet you.
Hello.
Well, one of the things that I have been doing for the past 5 years is, taking AI prompting for using AI, various ones for my research. I'm a writer as well, but scientific, medical writing, primarily. And one of the things that I've found is that I'm running 5 AI engines concurrently. I code the prompt into one, I copy and paste into the other 4,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
all always I get different answers from every one, and all of them lie. Every one is a
In
lie,
slightly different
exactly
ways,
as you
though.
were saying.
Slightly different flavors of lies.
And and I know they're lying because one is you have that broad range, but also I already know the answers before I ask the question because it happens to be my field of and so I'm trying to get them to do the hard work for me, which is just like you were using that comment about looking for the senators back in that 4-day travel period, right, in 2002. Well, it comes back to exactly what the LLM is, and the large language models are at this point in time versus what AI is, the public perception, because it's not even AI yet. It's not even close until they get the AGI, but then to the next synthetic intelligence and to recursive intelligence when it's actually thinking, because it's not thinking at this point
We
in
got some
time.
debates to have until that goes on. Wow.
Yeah. And the question comes back to, and I've been writing a whole series on iatrogenic disease caused by doctors. Well, one of the reasons, of course, that the diseases are caused by doctors is because what the doctors are being trained.
Mhm.
And that's both in the United States as well as under NHS. But it's training, it's not education. And as you had mentioned earlier about the AI being in control of when the doctor comes in and looks at something, what are they supposed to prescribe? So my latest paper, published a week ago, is iatrogenic cerebral mycosis, and how that fungal infection in the brain caused by the medical treatments, specifically antibiotics and steroids and PPIs, various types of drugs there, will actually deprive a human of the human agency, and will also deprive the ability of free will. You no longer have free will. So that seems to be a dramatically accelerated proponent of everything that you were discussing, of that control mechanism of the architecture. Well,
Mhm.
so my question then comes back to, you could see this in full bloom up until Trump took office, and a lot of the ways, I had a business in Dublin for years, and everything in the United States still seems to be almost opposite in many extremes with what is going on in the UK. And it also, in many factions of this hyper politicized society, it seems to be totally opposite now than it was when Trump took office 2 years ago almost.
Go on. So
Yeah, so
what's
what do you perceive that differentiation to be? Since, I mean, since it's very obvious,
okay, that's interesting.
who and what Musk's companies and Peter Thiel's companies have always been from
It's
from PayPal forward. What do you perceive that differentiation to be?
Okay, first of all, I'd say I echo your experience with my experience of having all of these windows open with different large language models and asking them the same questions, seeing what I get out, and realizing what we're doing there is we're looking at the edges of what is considered as AI. We've realized, okay, these are where the edges are. It's actually telling me lies if I push it this far, but it'll tell me a certain amount of truth. And there's certain elements, what you're saying, when I was saying about the senators and stuff, if you can find that information, if you can rationalize what the information that you weren't able to find, that it'll be able to find easily would be, you could find loads of useful strands that can just envelop or develop into bigger subjects. But I think what you're asking is really what changed and what's made it go so rapidly. And I would go back to when Trump left power the last time. Just on the first day that Joe Biden took office, they turned on 175 million IP addresses in America. All of a sudden, Department of Defense, they transferred it over to a private company. And that was going to be one of the most major bot farms that was going to power, I say bot farms, it's I'm using a very broad term there because it's going to be a load of different ways to push different theories, information, etc. But mainly, I think a lot of the society that we've got at the moment, the YouTubes, the X's, we see the likes, we see the retweets, we take that as a sign of public opinion, and I think that the majority of it is super fake. I think the majority of society, all of these PayPals and all of how the infrastructure was built from the late 90s and early noughties upwards, a lot of it, they said, okay, we need to get it trending, and for that we need to make a fake world where everybody believes that it's the only option anyway, because there were probably alternatives to PayPal, but nothing was going to survive, and nothing's really ever come close to it again, though there are alternatives or solutions that use a lot of the same mechanisms as something like that. But a lot of these technologies, very early on, they knew where they would develop to eventually. And so they've just manipulated and manufactured that. And when Joe Biden took office, I think there was, we see things like that, Trump was in office, Biden was in office, and Trump was in office. Like that makes some form of difference. But I don't think that makes really a difference to what's going on behind the scenes. Largely, I just think it's a new point of where certain operations start and new operations begin. In 2020 and 2021, I was hanging around with lots of people in the independent media circles, including people like Whitney Webb. Me and Whitney Webb were in a relationship back then, having a baby, and she was hearing the same things down on the scene from a lot of the people, her contacts, that they were starting to develop in the upper echelons of the defense networks of the United States, the idea of alien invasion, of a load of different things that would keep us all distracted during the time of fifth generation warfare. And really, all of this, it feels like that's what really started when Trump took over this time, is it set up the infrastructure for fifth generation warfare to start flooding the zone with masses of information that was over the top and just ridiculous at times, that left you not knowing what was up and what was down, pushing out people like Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, almost like they're being watched by every single person on earth, when they're not really. They're being watched by a load of people, but they've just boosted their numbers to make them look just supremely important. And that works with people. People go to where the trend is. They get taken by the algorithm to where the trend is. And I think what we're seeing is just the enacting of the actual mechanism of fifth generation warfare, their tactics, what the next stage was going to be. So what I see with Trump taking office, I mean, we're coming up to the midterms, so he's been in office for 2 years. As soon as I'd say one of the big examples of what I'm trying to say here, which I'm saying very clumsily, is Elon Musk took over Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency. And really, a lot of what the the department was replacing the rotten National Endowment style operations of non-governmental development organizations and offshore espionage, really trying to push and influence other countries. And they said, well, we definitely don't need that now. It's run its course. We needed that during the push for the fall of Soviet era. We needed that for the rise of NGOs and to make color revolutions happen. We needed all that infrastructure on the ground. Now we don't need it. So they've replaced that infrastructure with online infrastructure. And really, the Department of Government Efficiency was the technocrats closing each of the things they've already replaced with technological models. So I think the majority of 2022 onwards is the actual infrastructure for the technocracy was at a level that was efficient enough to push forward to the next stage. And the next stage is an increased level of fifth generation warfare. And in the future, we're going to just see that dial be dialed up more and more and more and more as it goes. They're going to want us to be believing whatever they say is the most popular thing out there. They're going to keep boosting their numbers and they're going to keep pushing us in a certain direction. And again, I do a lot of work about behavioral insights, nudge units, things like that. I think the majority of things that have happened over the past few years is humanity being nudged into disorder, trauma, into disarray, and really undermining current society, turning everybody against each other, having everybody, and this is a really important one, having everybody have arguments which have opposing dialectics with arguments that there are no solutions for. Neither side will ever say the other side is right, so it always leaves us divided, etc. And during that's really, all of those are parts of the increase of fifth generation warfare tactics.
Yeah.
That is precisely the phrase, is the polemic dialectic, because everyone in the United States it's like no one I talk to knows which way is up, which way is down. They are totally confused. They don't know what's true. They don't know what's not true. And they're seeking these answers in all the wrong places. And personally, I don't even watch social media. I don't have TV. I don't do any of that. I do my science. That's it. And so then I'm baffled when I talk to these people because, this in such disarray. And at the same time, what has happened in the past 2 years is that the corruption within all of the U.S. federal agencies and its institutions, including higher educational institutions, you just see that it's just rotten to the core of every agency and every institution. And so then the Americans, rightfully so, have lost faith in all of the institutions and federal agencies.
Yeah. I do think I'd just say one last thing there is that some of the people who've been painted as some of the stupidest people in American politics over the past 10 years, people like Lieutenant General Michael Flynn and others, they've truly created an idea of what fifth generation warfare should be used as a tier 1 military tactic, and it's been implemented. It's currently implemented. A lot of the reason why you feel disarray is because a lot of the independent media, channels and the people who we believe are independent media are created to leave us in disarray. We got to be very careful about who we give all of our time to and all of our attention to, because we're still being herded like cattle in the same way we were when Fox News and CNN were on top. And they were boosting their own ratings then as well.
Exactly. And so exactly what you were describing is the way that I do my research and my compilation of data. It's already knowing what the truth is, the reality is, and creating irrefutable arguments by taking the pieces around the edges and putting them together and synthesizing the data, because you can't get the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So Merrill is a DSc, which at least in the UK, Merrill, is a higher degree, much higher degree than a PhD. It's like a pretty difficult degree to get. I think it's the same in America, is it?
Well, it's Doctor of Science. It's just it's essentially an advanced PhD.
Yeah, so it's the same as the UK. Yeah, it's a very high degree.
Same as the UK.
Yeah, so I know loads of PhDs, but I only know one DSc that I've realized is a DSc, and that's you, Merrill. So, and Merrill's in Louisiana. He's got a fantastic Southern accent, but I don't think it's
doesn't he?
I don't think it's wholly Louisiana, is it, Merrill?
Yeah, Louisiana, yeah. And but it was really a pleasure, and I appreciate your presentation. Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Thank you, Meryl. It's a pleasure for me too.
Yeah, you two to get together. You'd move mountains together, I
I'd
think.
like it. I'd love it.
I can introduce you, Merrill, if that's okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Chin
great.
chin.
I'll just make a note of that. Merrill to Johnny.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Hey.
So Victor is next. Victor G. Vera, you're next.
Hey,
Sorry to
John.
keep you
Okay.
waiting.
Okay. Johnny, it's been a long time.
Hello. It's lovely to see you.
Hello.
When I saw you, my heart filled up as well. Makes me very happy.
Well, I do want to get in touch with you as I'm doing book, and I want your perspective. This is very important. What I would like to say, though, is that while most of the discussion is geared at people who are, in fact, within the academic and professions, that's not the ones who have their eyes open. They're the last ones in line. The ones who have their eyes open are the ones who have not been totally indoctrinated. Yes, they're confused about the politicians and about all these different rules that are coming at them. And AI, they're intrigued by, okay, because it's got a gaming thing to it as well. But it's very dangerous. It's essentially a dehumanizing mechanism. That's the purpose of it.
Mhm.
And I really think that we need to try in some way to figure out how to really go back and validate people's humanity, individuals. See, one of the things that all these systems do is eliminate the individual. The individual human being is no more than a gadget. It doesn't matter. It's a thing. And to accept that, I don't think that most of humanity all over the globe is really ready to go into that tunnel. Yes, they're confused and they don't know how not to. But I think it behooves us to really speak plainly. And you mentioned that that's one of the goals that you want to do. I know that when I speak to laborers, even people within the medical field, but not the doctors, the technicians, I throw at them little things, about COVID. And guess what? They tell me stories. I tried so hard not to take the shot, but working in this company, I just couldn't. And but believe me, I'm not taking any more. Okay? That's whereas the academics go back to who was it? It's always actually a lot of this comes from the British thinking. How we're going to teach children to believe that snow is black. Okay? That was a goal. And that's essentially what they've been doing. This is since the 30s. So I think that just fighting, AI per se, it's a tool. It's a weapon for sure. It's a very major weapon. But the main target is the human psyche, human brain.
Yes.
Because I really, as far as the weapons, and I know really nothing about it, but nevertheless, I'm watching a little bit the war in Iran. Iran doesn't have any of this stuff. And I don't know, but the United States and Israel don't seem to be able to put them out. So maybe, again, there's always the over enthusiasm, the weapons of mass destruction. I mean, the Nazis first used that term, as you know. And, we had a whole Red Scare during the 60s, right? And no, the Soviet Union did not have the atom bomb at all. I had to go under the desk to cover my head in case there would be an atomic attack. I mean, the absurdity of all this. Okay, so we've been through some of this in a slightly different way. I think it's time to validate people's individual right to say, no, I'm not going where you say. And I think that the COVID experience has actually helped some people to realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. That's a big thing.
Yeah.
I think we need not so much our own propaganda, but rather getting people to again trust their own instinct, their own experience, what their own body tells them.
But that's
People now have
dangerous.
been trained, to go once a year to the doctor to take all these different tests to find out if there's nothing. Hey, you don't need all that. If you're feeling fine, then that's it. Trust your own body. So I do want to get in touch with you. Let me know the direction.
I would love to talk to you. We could talk for hours and hours and hours. I'm pretty positive, and I'd love every single moment. And I think as well, and I say we, I mean world society, how worlds developed, how the agenda is developed. That same the fear that came from the idea of mutually assured destruction has been a lens that the future technology has been viewed through. So they're constantly AI. We've got that same sort of feeling that we're all going to destroy each other. So we should all share the technology as much as possible and proliferate it everywhere, and everybody should have the same. And then eventually, what you have is one world government,
Yes,
one
exactly.
world order,
Yes.
one bank account, one app, one
That's
ring
right.
to rule them all, etc., etc. And we all know, I mean, all of that does it all sniffs of the same sort of. It's just, as you'll understand, it's like a form of techno-communism with elements of fascism, brought to you really by people who were brought up by that generation as well, because I know Peter Thiel. I did a lot of research into his history, and he grew up in Swakopmund in what's now Namibia in Southwest Africa. His father was sending black people down uranium mines with absolutely zero protection, so they were ingesting uranium and taking that back home to their families who were ingesting uranium. The place where Peter Thiel lived have Nazi flags still flying in the late 60s and early 70s down the street. They were still Zeek-heiling each other and still selling all of their Nazi materials. And it's really, he was brought up in what seems like a cartoon version of like the worst type of cartoon as well, really poorly drawn cartoon version of what Nazism was potentially meant to be. And it's not a surprise that someone like that is one of the most powerful people in the world, because we've kind of let other people do everything for us so much. We don't think ourselves, we don't teach ourselves, we don't learn ourselves, and we keep getting pushed and we accept it. I really worry about the people when I'm walking. I do a lot of walking. I may talk on here a lot, when I speak, you could tell I like speaking, but I go out and I talk with people on the street all of the time. I'm walking around Cardiff constantly. People know me. Some of them know me as a weird guy with the dog off the lead who sings songs in the middle of town. So some people know me by many different ways, but they'll all have a time where, like, they have a little conversation with me. And what you're talking about, the opening up, where people open up to things now, it has changed quite drastically. And I live right opposite a hospital. University Hospital of Wales is 500 meters from my house, and everybody who lives in my area during COVID was working in the hospital, and a load of them had really stern and nasty things to say during the pandemic because they were being pushed into feeling like that by an external force that was malevolent and was meant to turn us against each other rather than discussing the real issues. And afterwards, now years down the line, loads of those same people said, I thought you were lying to me. I'm sorry. And I want to know more. And now's the ability, the moment where you can get those questions out. Again, it won't stop them from doing the same thing they did during the pandemic, because Event 0201, Matthew Harrington from Edelman PR said himself, flooding the zone is the best way to just drown out any other information. And that's what they did during COVID. They flooded the zone with information. That AI is what is like a really focused flooding of the zone. They can give you whatever. If you ask, and people will just go to a search engine and say, who is so-and-so, so-and-so, and it will give a description of those people. Well, it will flood the zone with whatever information it presented in whichever way is appropriate for the powers that be. And, we will only see the things they want us to see. And that's what they keep doing. They make the zone their own. So I look forward to speaking with you soon, and I hope Stephen connects us.
Okay.
Oh, you want me to do that? Okay. So you don't know how to connect with Vera?
No, I've probably got her name down somewhere. I'll email you.
Okay.
I'm sure, but it would be nice just in case.
I'll connect you as well. Okay, just to
I
make
love
sure.
you, Stephen. Thank you.
So Victor G, you're muted, Victor. Oh, thank you, Vera, for the question,
Hello.
by the way.
Yeah, Johnny, just going back to what you came in and led the conversation with, talking about the Palantir and the Technotronic, control grid and everything. I was wondering, what do you think the implications are of these small shoebox-sized cube satellites? Because they're putting so much stuff up there, in the atmosphere nowadays, and it seems even, groupings of these things would, have magnitudes less power than a, conventional GPS type of satellite. Um, yeah, I mean, of course they're using them for something. Just wondering, what do you think the use is in that department? And also, what do you think the control grid type of, technology, surveillance, control mechanisms are going on, but just besides the, conventional Palantir type of, disposition and tracking and tracing, you know, system?
Well, thank you, Victor. I would say, first of all, on the satellite front, on what are the Space B sat style, they're even smaller than the shoebox. They are described as slightly larger than a thick smartphone. So if you can imagine, about that big, about as wide as my mouth, and they can be sent up in mass, and they don't work like a normal satellite. They don't just orbit the Earth. They're in a constellation. So they basically move off each other and they use very small amount of energy to move, and they've got better use of energy because they use plasma fluid to actually move. Then one of the main uses for these is they're extremely low tech, but they don't have to turn on, they don't have to maintain any sort of power. They could just be floating through space, and then they need to track a certain bit of information. They turn on that satellite for a brief moment, and it pings, gets the information, and pings it across to another satellite that pings it down, and
Well,
it uses V8. Go
wouldn't
on.
wouldn't that be, less uh less efficient of a, technology than these just normal satellites? Because I mean, these
No,
GPS
no.
satellites, they're like the size of a SUV, car.
Yeah,
I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me how you could just use a little bit of energy to GPS us down to, walking on down the sidewalk
that's
and
the use of
everything.
plasma. That is why Benjamin Longmire is quite famous within the world of satellites. He helped to develop very small satellite technology to use plasma so that it could use extremely low energy and only transmit when it needed to, so it could stay up for a very long time. But even if you lost one, even if they don't work, because they're so cheap to put up, what you're talking about, the GPS style satellite, number one, it's not in a constellation approach. So it has to stay in a static orbit. It goes like this, round in a circle. You have to wait for it to get round there. They're all around the Earth, constantly moving at high speed, going across every point of the Earth at least twice a
But
day, able
how
to
would they
ping
have
stuff.
enough energy to,
Plasma energy. That's what
to
that's
beam, a GPS signal down to us?
they
It
barely
takes a
they
huge thing, I thought.
No, this is why VHF signals extremely high frequency signals that are extremely quick and extremely brief. What they've done is that big
I
SUV
don't
size
know.
satellite is obviously clearly a poor technology for power. It takes a massive amount of power. It takes a massive amount of energy to actually put them up there. It's in a static orbit, so it's not in a constellation. It's unable
But
to be
these small
programmed.
little, constellations, they can't really transfer energy to each other.
Uh,
Sure, they can communicate.
they can transfer
Um,
information to each other. Why would they need to transfer?
Yeah,
Current satellites
Victor,
don't transfer
it's
energy
a
to each other.
network.
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I figured they'd have to be wired together, or something. But thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
I
Any
will say
comments
it's
about the control grid, beyond the Palantir type of tracking technology?
I think there's an entire, I mean, what we see, so it is like apps in a website or tiers of membership in Netflix or something like that. You're going to get access to more and better software and better technology to track and trace if you're tier one Department of Defense. They're going to have a completely different operational structure, like with the satellites themselves. For us ourselves, Starlink, even for some of the warfare, Starlink is what is being used. Star Shield is the military version, the US military version of Starlink. It's a completely separate system, has completely different functionality is much more improved over to what the Starlink system is. And the Swarm system that I'm talking about, the Space B small, able to transfer very quick amount of data and use hardly any power and work in a constellation. They've been integrated into Starshield and Starlink. So I would suppose the version of Palantir, like the Gotham styles operating system that Palantir uses for the police, they will have a Department of Defense version of that, which has got masses of capabilities that are above what the police have. So intelligence wise, they can watch so much, see so much. But again, that's what the panopticon is more knowledge. The more you look into it, the more understanding you have that you're being watched.
And anything on the ground level? Any type of developments there besides just the cameras and um, 15-minute city type of things?
Well, I think that all of it just a lot of the stuff that's on the ground is going to be wired up to a network, accessible anyway, and it's increasing and increasing. So if they get eventual ability to access ring doorbells and stuff, they've this infrastructure is going up all around. But what I'm talking about with the satellite technology, that can measure movements underground, overground, at sea, anywhere on the earth, at any time, for the first time in the history of that technology. That is a panopticon around the earth that can see what's going on in the earth in so many different ways, and could track what's going on in the earth in so many different ways, that becomes the on the ground. That's the same. It's
Okay.
all around us.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, so very good. So Anders Brunstad is next from Norway, and then it's you, Alex Bailey.
Very, very great to hear from you, Johnny. You are a great source of information, and I have also, let's say, some ideas about Palantir, and I'd like to make a kind of not presentation, but a questionnaire to you, linked to some facts. So Palantir now, they were heavily involved in the COVID monitoring situation in USA and UK. They are the main instrument. When we hear Ukraine is doing something against Russia, it is Palantir who is using new technology, integrating satellite and Starlink and whatever you say. In Sweden, they announced yesterday or this week that they are now going to start monitoring in real time face analysis in the streets, which is identical to what Mark Steele has been talking about in the UK. So we have the 5G that people know where your phone is. It's through satellite, it's through ground network, and it is now in this 50-minute city. They are scanning cars, but they are now more and more scanning faces. So we are getting close to the Chinese model, and Palantir is very much part of this. And this is CIA deep state, and it is a control mechanism which is then connecting soon to maybe central bank digital currency and the globalist, whatever they want to do. Can you comment on these kind of input?
Yeah, there's one thing I really find interesting about Palantir is that when you're talking there about them entering into the stage via COVID, they took that as a very that opportunity to quickly be involved in COVID in the UK, and as soon as they basically 2020 straight involved, and they admitted themselves, and this is the interesting point, they admitted themselves that they didn't have any type of infrastructure for doing what they were asked to do by the NHS during COVID, but they were the only company that the NHS looked to provide that infrastructure to sift data, to analyze, and to do track and trace, and to do lots of other things. So we can see that Palantir isn't just about them, like an organization like the NHS or the US Department of Health or the like, going to companies that can actually do the job. They just go to Palantir and say, we need a job that doesn't have a solution that we can see out there, create a solution. That's even more dangerous. They don't even have to supply a product that then gets regulated, sold, that we look at first, we decide whether it's good enough. What they're doing is they are creating the product from the ground up, from the build, for the people. It's a lot actually like what Hamilton 68, the misinformation and disinformation tool, that was built in the same way. I've talked to one of the whistleblowers from that, and she, Miss Dupois, and she explained that at the start the system didn't even make any sense, but slowly they add on functionality. And I think that's what's one of the big dangers of Palantir is they are asked to do what hasn't been done yet. So really, they're an evangelical technology company. A lot of it is technological evangelism. We are entering into a place where a lot of the solutions don't exist, and the biggest company around could quickly build technology in an emergency, hence us needing to have state of emergencies. Now, when it comes down to face recognition technology, we can expect that to be the same way that digital IDs or tax information is going to go digital. We can expect the infrastructure of the state to implement these technologies more and more, and out on the street they'll have AI monitoring people. And I spend a lot of time, like I say, I spend a lot of time walking around on the street as a hobby. I know this isn't a good hobby for most people, but as a hobby, I'm a police auditor and I'm a public photographer, and I go out and I record, do just public photography, and I find it really interesting. Some of the stuff you find out on the street, it looks like a Grand Theft Auto game from the past. It's very predictable how humans act. There's a lot of on the streets of Cardiff, there's a lot of homeless people, there's a lot of people like that. They will be tracing those people, tracking them with facial recognition systems, and they'll be able to sell it to people like this. Look, these offenders who target children or target women, they will be easier to trace. And trust me, a load of people will turn around and say, well, that makes a load of sense, I'm going to go with that. It's not going to be hard to sell us, and they say sell us, I'm not talking about me personally, but I'm talking about the majority of the population. It's not going to be hard for them to find reasons that they can sell that to us. Many of the cases where we've had missing girls in the UK, they've been like, it touched the heart so much. They will use events like that, missing children, missing people, and they will use it to tug heartstrings to implement the technology more and more. And if the technology is already there on every lamppost waiting to be turned on, it can be a civilian technology when it's first implemented. Like I was saying with Mr. Steele, it could be literally a civilian technology, and then suddenly the infrastructure switches and it's part of a defensive security and intelligence database collecting information from
short
every part
follow-up.
of
Are you aware of a cooperation between Peter Thiel and Elon Musk regarding, let's say, Starlink? Starlink is actually now part of the phone system. So if you have an iPhone or later models, you have, I call it the 6th or 7th antenna. You have access to low speed communication through Starlink on a normal new iPhone, which I
That'll
find
be using the
concerning.
swarm technology.
Can you connect, warfare technology, NATO, CIA, whatever, and can you connect this to Hunger Games movie?
Yeah, I think so. I have to say, when I'm saying about the people out on the streets, it looking like Grand Theft Auto 5 back in the day, that's a dystopian vision of the future, and that's a vision that they're creating. If they keep doing this, it's going to look like Judge Dredd 2000 AD, The Running Man. It'll look like anything they wanted to look like, and the technology will be used in one way. We're looking at how it could be used by police or by intelligence, but it could be used in it has so many different other functions that can also be used, and I'm going to say it, this makes me feel sick when I say it, going to be used for entertainment, going to be used for if you've ever watched or read the I think it came from a book originally, The Running Man idea. It's a corporation in charge of the world. There's one corporation in charge, and they have this entertaining show called The Running Man where you can make loads of money in this really poor technocratic system. You could actually make a load of money and pay for the meds that now cost loads and loads for your kids if you go out and you entertain the public at risk of death. Well, that's going to be represented in so many ways that aren't so tongue-in-cheek in the future. There's going to be loads of different ways that AI and the tools that are created by people like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk are going to be used to turn us against each other. And of course they're working together. Peter Thiel and Elon Musk's companies are inextricably linked, keystone architecture for the the globalist panopticon. The Elon Musk isn't only making a satellite network, he's making an everything app, he's making a load of different solutions. Peter Thiel is making a load of digital solutions. And as you saw with Carbine 9/11, and Nicole Junkermann and Peter Thiel in the Epstein files were communicating with Jeffrey Epstein very regularly about creating Carbine 9/11 and meeting up with the teams, because they're already mapping out, before we even know we supposedly need Carbine 9/11, they're already mapping out and saying this will be a technology that is needed in the future, and evangelizing that technology, making it happen. They are technological evangelists creating our future. So yeah, definitely in it together. And there's lots of evidence that the Starlink has been used in the Ukrainian war. Lots of evidence, but every time you go to look at that evidence, it's been deleted offline, or it gets deleted soon from online, or it gets deleted soon after. So it's all obviously high-grade defense stuff.
Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you.
very good, Anders. So next question is from, and so we're on track to finish, Johnny. So we'll take this question now, and then we'll give you 5 minutes to sum up the most important things that you need to tell us.
Okay.
If you can do that. Yeah. If
I
you're
can do that.
I think you can do it, yeah. So Alex, you're muted, but go ahead.
Hi, Johnny. Just a very quick question. Where do you think we're going with the whole alien disclosure, the UFO disclosure space? You've got Tulsi Gabbard coming up with the whole sort of interdimensional component. Is it just another screenplay that's been thrown at us?
So
Yeah.
for some reason your voice was distorted then, Alex. Johnny, did you hear the question?
I take it you were asking about the disclosure about potential extraterrestrial beings and communication across galaxy, yeah? Because it's being, is that correct, yeah?
Yes,
Is that what you said, Alex?
Yes, my question was basically, where are we going with the whole UFO disclosure thing, and particularly when Tulsi Gabbard comes out and starts talking about it's an interdimensional problem. Where's that all going, in your opinion?
This is all low level at the moment. They are spreading the wings when it comes to fifth generation warfare. They are checking the edges. They're checking what people believe. They're running their test. I mean, these guys are going to be using marketing firms, promotional firms. They're going to be looking at all the analytics. They're going to be deciding how far people will believe and how far they can push them to believe, what they can make them believe in, how far they can push them into some sort of other reality. And AI will help with that. Slowly, as people indulge in these everything machines, people will slowly get wrapped in a bubble and they will believe whatever they're given a lot of the time. But to be perfectly honest, the majority of people out there are so fed up, they're willing to believe anything. They don't care. They want a little bit of excitement. They want something fun. They come home from work, they don't want to talk about politics, Palantir, or what the voting looks like. They want a different life. They want to indulge in fantasy. And that's why fifth generation warfare works so well. We've left the world of kinetic warfare, firing bullets, firing bombs. That's almost over. It's not completely over, almost over. It really is a world where we're not supposed to know where we are. So I think it's a never-ending, bottomless pit of subjective, opinionated nonsense arguments that we can never get out of, that we end up just fighting each other over what might be and what might not be. And it will end, if it ends, and lots of people are pushing this theory out, and I think it's probably true. If I'm to predict something, it will end when technology is good enough in some form of fake alien interaction or fake intergalactic messaging system or something which will start to tell us certain things that we want to do and where we should go in the future ourselves, and we'll probably be very close to where those in power want us to go anyway, just coincidentally. And it has been said by Eric Schmidt and others. I mean, Eric Schmidt and Kissinger, they both said it. Oh, in the future, AI will be so advanced, it will tell us what to do, and we won't understand the reasoning, but it's for our better, it's for our own good. It's for the best if we follow what AI does. And that's what they want. They want us handing over our own autonomy. They want us just following. So I think the alien stuff is just part of that. It's us indulging in illusion, indulging in fantasy in such a way that does capture us. I love aliens too. Love watching alien movies like robots from space and all of that. Yeah. I understand it, but it's really wearing when you listen to their, when we know if the politicians are saying it, it's a lie. So there you go. That's it.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. So Jim, you had your hand down and now you got it up again. And Tom, the same thing with you. You should know better. You've been on these meetings thousands of times. We were trying to wind up.
Bad boys.
Yeah, exactly. So can you have a quick question each? But Jim, no speeches about parasites and all the rest of it, or whatever. So please, question.
Yeah, sorry, I went through the elevator and my my connection went down. Hey, great talk, Johnny. And
thank you.
Your significant other, Whitney Webb, wrote a portion of a book with Cynthia McKinney, When China Sneezes. I thought that was a very interesting. And your topics on AI, is AI demonic, or will it always lie? And is it an intelligence operation? Because intelligence operatives seem to lie to us all the time. So, and how do we make money off of this? Because we seem to all be going bankrupt, to tell the truth. Palantir stock went from $7 to $700 to $100 and something dollars, almost $200. And SATL, Satellogic, who seems to be tracking the oil wells, has gone from $2 to 9 or 10, something like that. How do we not go bankrupt while the intelligence agencies cut global crossing cables so that we have to have it sent through the satellites? How do we stay solvent during this?
Oh God, that's a hard one, because you look. There's on the screen there with Marv is When China Sneezes by Cynthia McKinney. Indeed, I think there's we've got to find our place in the new world. And that's going to be really hard for us old timers. Me adapting to. I mean, I'm amazed by some of the things it can do, like AI, etc. At the moment, what we talk with large language models, I'm amazed by some of what it can do, and some of it is really useful. Is it a psyop? Yes, of course, it's a psyop. It's used in the same way that a lot of this technology is used at the start. It's used much more as a dystopian tool of censorship, of changing of disinformation, than it is being used to free mankind and help mankind be better and help us all work out to be better. We're clearly not. We're so not walking towards that world, because everything that these people put in is demonic to some extent. Yes. Yes, I think demonic is a word that even if you're not into believing in a religion here or a religion there, or what you know, an almighty, etc., you can still understand the term demonic to be naturally of evil, of just honestly sinister. And I don't think there's any way that you can implement something that holds such an ability to control information and to control people's choices. Again, I say choices, and it be put into the hands of good people. The worst people in society are always going to use those tools for what they want to create. And it's really, I mean, there's so much we could have an hour, 2 hour conversation on the morals and ethics of parts of AI. But yeah, officially it's evil. And how are we all going to make money? We have to find a new place, because, you know, if they say data is the new oil, we got to find, if we want to make some money, we got to find how we can use data in the same way oil was used, to make some sort of money and make a living and to make a life. We've got to change the way we live. That doesn't necessarily mean we got to hand ourselves over to Palantir, or we got to use what these people tell us to use, or live in a way that these people tell us to live, or to go into a direction, or be tricked with alien encounters or stuff. We don't have to lose our mind. We just need to understand where we fit in a world with such an all-pervasive technology. And I will, one thing there I'll say about that as well is the wheel. Once upon a time, if you were back in the time when the wheel was first invented, and you turned round to people and said, well, I'm not going to get involved in this new technology. I'm sorry. I can tell you that you won't be going down that road as fast as the people who got the wheel. That's in all sorts of different ways. What is happening with large language models is going to change the world. Whether it leads to AGI, supreme intelligence, general intelligence, whatever, it makes no difference. It makes no difference. At the moment, the world is changing around us, and we need to work out how we use this new wheel to our advantage and how we don't get run over by the wheel.
Thank you, Johnny. And just as an aside, an Amish lady was told by the Red Cross that she was one of the closest relatives to the fallen angels. And she said, "You're kidding me." And we got some documentation that the closest people, the smartest serpents people, closest relative to the fallen angels, may be the Amish that share the K26R gene with the Ashkenazi Khazarians. And that genetic link may be very interesting. They also may be least likely to get the COVID and things like that. So just the genetics of the fallen angels, the genetics of our ancestry is really key, and was part of Jeffrey Epstein's documentation. And I can send you some information on this if you'd like.
I will also say, if you want to look a little bit about Jeffrey Epstein's family history, you can go to my YouTube page, where I've done a little bit of Jeffrey Epstein's family tree back about 200, 300 years. And also the same with Jordan B. Peterson, where I went back to 1500 BC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, thank you.
BC.
BC, yeah, I know. Well, you got to put your tongue in your cheek on that. We're going back to the times of it might be 750 BC, back to King Brutus, but still, you got to put your tongue in cheek when you're following the lines of Welsh kings, and you know you're back in unknown territories. All right.
Yeah, that was when the Greek alphabet came about in the 7th, 8th century BC.
Yeah, probably 750 BC, I think, is King Brutus.
Yeah. So we haven't been around very long, have we, Johnny? You know, all these people take human beings so seriously, you know, and I'm thinking to the, we haven't been living in any kind of civilization for more than 150 years. Anyway, maybe 200. Anyway, Tom Rodman next. We take ourselves so seriously, and yet we can't conceive of the huge universe of which we are part. At least what we're told is, you know, hundreds of billions of galaxies in the universe. known universe and hundreds of billions of stars in each galaxy. It's just unbelievable. And yet human beings, we think we're great. And guess what? We had no say of whether we came onto this planet, and we have no say as to whether we leave this life, we all die in the end. And yet human beings want to take themselves so very seriously, and they're just another dominant species destined to be superseded by yet another dominant species, in my opinion. But anyway, Tom Rodman's next. And Tom, not a series of questions, one question.
This is going to be different because I'm a proxy. If Carla wants to jump in, she can. She asked me to ask a question. I'm in the Midwest. She's on the other side of Lake Michigan from me in Michigan. She's an attorney, and she follows this Mark Kulog, who works with J.J. Couey, and this has to do with Epstein. And Mark Kulog is highlighting two magazines around they were founded around 1999 or in the early 2000s. One of them is Radar magazine, and apparently Epstein was an advisor and investor in that. And then Talk magazine, he may or may not have had direct involvement, but I guess Kulag's view on this is that these are used as conduits for information about Epstein and presumably, propaganda. I don't know. So, are you familiar with Mark Kulog? He's a independent researcher. And any comments on this? Obviously, if Carla wants to jump in, because I think she might be on, certainly jump in. Go ahead.
Well, I don't think she wants to jump in because that's why she asked you to ask the question for her.
So I can tell you that I don't know Mr. Kulak, but I have actually written an article at the end of last year called Trump Epstein, How to Catch and Kill a Mockingbird, because what they were doing with Radar magazine and with others, Trump and Epstein were both getting involved in purchasing magazines at the same time and newspapers at the same time. Very interesting is Radar, one of the people who were on the Radar buyout was alongside Epstein was Michael Wolff, who was also being a big voice about Epstein later on, but was also part of Edge Foundation during the noughties and the tens, which was of course 100% funded by Epstein, so has multiple links with Epstein through that route. And my reading of that was that they bought or went into buying media organizations at the moment when they realized that their worlds were about to fall apart. These are different people for different reasons as well. I think Trump was, and this is one of the things I try and come across in the article, is that Trump was purchasing it partially because he wanted to increase his political influence and his ability to actually push forward his own image in a positive way. And Epstein was looking to manage the image, especially when it hit about 2004, 2005. No, there's a lot more to this, though. There's a lot more to this. Stuff that isn't known, that hasn't been talked about at all. I'll talk about some of it really quickly now. But Epstein, in 2004, stepmother of a woman phoned up the Palm Beach police, said that her daughter had been found with $300 in her handbag at school. And when asked about it, they were told that she had given a massage to a billionaire. And that stepmother refused. She is my number one, maybe number two. Her and Detective Ricari are my heroes of the Epstein case, because in that same year that Epstein's putting in his money at Radar magazine, to buy out that same year, she would not take no for an answer. And Detective Ricari, a true man of justice, rest in peace, went and took it all of the way and had his house raided, and the whole Epstein house of cards started to tumble. And at that moment, the Epstein crew sent out his massive army of propagandist billionaire investors to start purchasing parts of lots of different magazines, and they didn't manage to actually get much hold in anything mainstream. However, by the time it come past to his being released in 2009 from his open door prison sentence, I believe that there was a lot of he went to an Irish solicitor first, and they asked him and a few others how they could change his image in the media from getting away from the P word that was being used all around the place. And they said, basically, there's no way you can do it because you're convicted and you're known. And so they kind of left his advice, and instead they set up a load of media organizations. Now, I've been tracing a load of media organizations that later on turned into independent media organizations, and they weren't necessarily funded by this time. By the time we get to 2013 and 14, they were being funded for Epstein, but not by Epstein. They were being funded, and this includes independent media organizations that still run today. They were being funded by JP Morgan. And that's a really interesting fact. And the banks were buying out or creating independent media separate from Epstein, detached from Epstein, and they were creating independent media because the future was all going to be fifth generation warfare. They knew it. So they were looking to catch and kill a mockingbird. That's what they were doing. They were looking to get the mockingbird media and catch and kill any stories they could and try and manage what was eventually ended in supposedly Epstein dying. But me personally, I think that he was part of a tier 1 intelligence organization, and he got outed through a witness protection program. He probably lives somewhere to this day laughing at the world and what they've made of his history, and cackling even, you could say, because I don't think Epstein's dead at all. I have to say that. And yeah, that's what I have to say about the media organizations.
Okay, and yeah, I'll put some information about Mark Kulitz in the chat. And so this was a transition away from magazines to online media, and someone in another group mentioned the introduction of this term mass trauma mind control that may have happened around 2001. That term might have come into existence. But so any comments on why both magazines folded so quickly? And that should do it. Thank you very much.
I would say that if you do want to ask Mr. Kulitz, if you know him, if you want to ask him to or give me his information, send me his information, I'll go and get him on the podcast. We'll have a good conversation about this. I think they folded because they knew what the future looked like, and they were trying to create versions of it, but they just weren't very good versions. They were going to collapse. But some of it is about moving money, hiding money, and especially about the moving dodgy money. Back in I think it was early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, Epstein was involved in another magazine, which I've never actually talked about this story, and it will come out in a book eventually, so I'm be very careful. But it was a female magazine. It was a magazine for feminism, and a load of people who got ousted by Gloria Steinem's people suddenly got offered a miraculous job over here, and it turned out it was actually funded by Epstein. But I'm not going to say the full story there. I'll tell that another time. But I think they'd been doing it for more than just around the beginning of the noughties. I think they wanted to be in control of the media because the media is money.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Johnny, what's the book? What's the book, Johnny?
What that I'm going to be writing?
Yeah. Does it have
Oh,
a title?
Unfortunately, I've got 5 books on the go right now. What I'm trying to do is write them. Because I write in series. I write in broad series. So a lot of my series, for instance, like my Pottinger series, already has like 45,000 good words, and I've got loads of other information that nobody actually knows about and things I've discovered since. So I think that I have a Pottinger book. I know I got a Pottinger book in the work right now. I'm halfway through a book on Nicole Junkermann, an Epstein associate, and that's going to be. I have to say, online in front of all of you now, I may be murdered before I get that book out. She's been trying to find ways to buy the publishing rights for that books or to steal the publishing rights from that books, including taking me to that whole being chased around by the Vatican in Rome, was the Vatican became conduits of an Epstein associate who was trying to buy a book deal off me. I've got an Epstein book that I'm halfway through that I'm not. It is going to be a bit. I'm going to be a bit quiet about it. I got one about murders in London in the 1950s and nightclubs being taken over by London gangsters and the rise of the satanic sex party movement, which was the founders called the Black Hand series. And I've got another one up my sleeve as well that I'm not going to really talk about. But I promise you that within probably before the end of this year, the first of a series of books will come out. I don't want to make them too long. I don't want to, but and there's also a Jack the Ripper book that I've been halfway through, which I've kept in top secret because it's got so much information that's never come out and never been found before, and I'm really excited. And I'm actually making a musical of that at the same time. So there's a lot going on book-wise.
Yeah, very good, Johnny.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
in summary, you're pretty creative, aren't you? So, Anders, but
Yes,
you've
very
asked a
short.
question before, Anders. So keep it short,
Yeah,
please.
very shortly, Johnny. I have one final question to you, which is important for me because I have been working, I would say, semi-half professional for about 15, 16 months on AI. Because I learned a lot about it. And I started in 1983 in, let's say, Supercalc, then Multiplan, then Excel, Lotus, etc. And I would say AI doesn't exist today for humans. We have something which is AA, which is advanced analytics, but it is not at all any AI. And I can say that if you ask questions in the forest, you get stupid answer. So the only way to use AI, in my opinion, and I'm a really professional user, I use it really, really heavy. And I started with Grok, and I'm into a cloud, which I think is one of the best. And if you start with any of them, they are useless, completely wasteless. But if you add information, if you add good data, and you consider this is not intelligence, this is analytics, they can be very good. But they do a lot of mistakes, a lot of bad mistakes. So if you trust them, you will be almost jailed because the mistakes are huge and they admit it. So I would say the learning models, but they will be better. But let's say the current problem is that they are relying on mainstream media and they are not having enough facts. But if you feed them, they are really good. And I don't want to make AI an enemy. AI can be our friend, but you need to learn, like riding a horse. I don't do it, but I can say if I did, if I I can drive a car, but I don't ride a horse, but I can do AI and I can do it in a way which is better than maybe 80% of lawyers. That's my claims. Comments.
So I would say I will echo you 5 times over and say about AI over and over again. If you use any models, if it's for videos, analytics, for writing, for music, it makes no difference. Good input equals good output in anything like that. You have to have a really solid base to get something out of it. really. The rest, I mean, if you put in, I know people who go up and they say, write me a whole theater play about this or a whole theater play about that. You're going to get one crap theater play if you have AI write it up for you, or what's and I accept what's currently considered AI, but is nowhere near AI or what we would really argue as being AI. But that's really a pedantic. I mean, it's the modern word that we use or term that we use to describe large language models. And really, it is really good input equals really good output. There's a load you can do with it if you've got loads of good input.
Thank you, 100%.
Yeah. Johnny, I've got one final question for you. Orwell, George Orwell, before he died, I think it was just before he died, he was asked, what did he see in the future? Obviously, in the light of having written 1984. And he said, a boot stamping on a human face forever. Is that accurate, do you think? Did he know something?
I think he was one of the boys, really. I gotta be honest. I think and if you listen to a Fabian tell you, and he was a Fabian, however much we don't like it. I mean, Orwell, we build him up to be someone, and even people who are complicated can give us a good idea of what a dystopian future could look like. But I think Orwell really did push dystopia to be dark, sad, depressing, semi-Victorian, I would say. Like there was an element of the Industrial Revolution, or the idea of mimicking the Industrial Revolution about everything. So I don't think a boot. I think he was. I think he was part of a group that wanted us to accept, yet also seem like they were fighting against subjugation. I think they wanted us to accept a different type of subjugation instead of these guys' subjugation over here, accept this subjugation slowly. So really, I think maybe what he was saying is, me and my friends want to put our boot on your face forever.
Yeah, so he wasn't warning human beings about an oppressive future.
He's telling us what him and his boys wanted to do to us, or were doing to us. But he was right, and it still doesn't make it untrue. We have, I mean, it does seem like the authoritarians want to push that upon us, and if we keep that image in mind, that's we then create things that look like that. So I think we've got to stop being so negative about the future. And George Orwell, his work was extremely negative about what's the future. Maybe the future would be, and this would be a much different future, is a boot stepping down on the human face, and the human lifting that boot off his face and pushing him away. And that is the future, is the attempt to put tyranny upon us and to subjugate us, and for us to always fight against subjugation. And that's a human quality that has prevailed, and we're getting better at that as we go. As they develop bigger walls around us, we are getting better at pushing that boot off our face.
So do you think that he was trying to take any hope that was arising, so he was pointing, so in 1984, the book, of course, you've read it, have you, Johnny? You must have.
I read half of it about 5 times. And I have to say, I'm just not, I don't like dystopia as much, I'm a positive type of guy, and I don't really, of course I watched the movie over and over again, and I know the story, it's been spoon fed to us over and over again. but I think that's a look into the worst of humanity, and it's projected out to be scary and to make us fear. But I mean, the thing is about the technocracy in the future, it looks nothing like an Orwellian vision, because it's bright lights everywhere, so bright you can't close your eyes, and you can't stop from seeing all the boots all around, and they're all brightly colored boots, and they're all distracting you constantly, because I don't think that world is the world that will be created in the future. I think the future world, every single tyrannical ruler will use bright lights and flashing images against us to manipulate our minds and to make us go one way or the other.
So whether you look at 1984, George Orwell's 1984, or Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, it seems to me that both of them, by different methods, so classical totalitarianism with Huxley, and a brutal dictatorship with in 1984, George Orwell's 1984. But it seems to me that in both of them, they were describing the destruction of the individual, you know. So the individual, the brilliant individual, you know, like the Beethovens and the famous artists, you know, these people, and people who trust their instincts, as you have said, we should all trust our instincts, but some people have no instincts because they don't even pay attention to their instincts these days, because they think they don't need to. So which do you think is the closest? Aldous Huxley's creation or George Orwell's?
I think we're more likely to walk towards a world that's more like Huxley's, mainly because of our use of drugs to perk us up and to control us. And if you look at what Christian Angermeyer, who's the guy who's created the enhanced games, or created the enhanced games, the Olympics with drugs, etc., he's also created a range of they may be marketed as drugs for antidepressants or anti-anxiety, but really they're behavioral change drugs. They change your behavior in many different ways too. So I think we're much more likely to go to a world where we are offered things that make us take us away from our depression and our sadness, are given bright lights to distract and all of those things, so that it soothes a little bit of us for a little bit of time. But for that to work, they have to create the world to be depressing. They have to create us to feel like we're in despair. They have to have our world be depressing, and for us to be anxious and depressed and look outside our windows. I mean, we are already heading towards a brave new world in many ways. A lot of what I see outside is young people. There was three young ladies. I got mirrored windows on my house, and it's right in on the front of a park, and loads of people often stop by, you know, and they're having their conversations and stuff. Three girls yesterday, they come down, they must be about 16. They all had these bright colored alcohols in a little ball. They're ball bursts, I don't know, whatever they call them, and they love it nowadays. You know, everything's got to be bright. They've got their vapes, they're neon yellow, neon red, neon blue. They don't care what's in them. They don't care what they're taking. They don't care. They're in despair. They want that despair to stop. So what do they look for? They look for bright lights and pretty colors. They look for the fantasies that have been sold to us throughout our entire life. And those fantasies have been sold to us by the same people who sold us dystopia too. You know, these people who we're talking about here, Huxley and Orwell, I think we try and vision our future as being a simplistic version here or a simplistic version there. But I think, in fact, it's a complicated mess of distraction is what we're going to get in the future. The world of Blade Runner or the world of Judge Dredd is probably much closer to the world that we're going to get in the future. You know, already for people to go out and just work a normal job and to be able to afford to live in areas around by me, they need like 2,000 a pound a month to pay their food and to pay their housing and their rent, and that is almost all that they can possibly earn if they're working all month long for most of them. So they are trapped in a cage which seems to be getting smaller and smaller, because it is getting smaller and smaller, but at the same time it's getting smaller and smaller. It's getting brighter, more colorful, and people are going and they're watching what they call entertainment, and their version of entertainment is just watching trauma. Every single show out there is a traumatic event, and then people say sorry, and then a traumatic event, and then people say sorry, and a traumatic event, and people say sorry. Every single. I watched. I thought I'd put on something light in the background the other day when I was doing some research, and I put on the first two series of Superman and Lois, mundane, modern idea of the Superman drama going on in the background while I'm working, and all it was a selection of people saying sorry to each other. Every episode they do really stupid things that you wouldn't do in reality just so you can say sorry. And then I went outside and I saw people saying sorry to each other, constantly doing stupid things constantly so they could say sorry. People need to have some form of emotional sort of response. They need to have something. They're in trauma all of the time, and our world's been made to be like that. Fifth generation is made to be like that. So we're being kept in a world that feels like dystopia all of the time. In reality, the grass is green, the birds are singing in the sky, the squirrels are running round, my dog's as cute as anything, and life's all right. You don't actually need to be in that sort of trauma, but we are being put into a box and being squeezed. A lot of people find their everyday life, they can't see the butterflies or the sunny sky anymore. All they see is that they can't afford to live at the end of the month. And it was the same, for my parents' generation and for their generations before, and nothing has changed. When my mum and dad were young, when I was just 1 or 2 years old, my mum and dad couldn't eat. Every Thursday, they would have to not eat themselves so that the kids could eat. They could afford just enough throughout. If they actually chopped everything down, that they would just have to go without food on a Thursday, and then they would be able to feed us throughout the week and everybody. So life was hard back then, back when my dad was a steel worker, back when Margaret Thatcher was cutting them all down. But life was hard. Life is hard here for roughly the same reasons. But they've looked at the past, they've seen our struggles before, and they've created a world where they can manage our struggles and make us struggle. One of the Epstein funded courses, very quickly, one of the last things I'll say, one of the Epstein funded courses that Musk attended was in behavioral insights about Richard Thaler, the head of the nudge units, about manipulating people's behavior by using social media surreptitiously without them knowing. And one of the actual classes, one of the days that they went to study was in the psychology of scarcity, how to use poverty against people. And that's the world we live in. And it's an Orwellian idea. And the poverty leads people towards the neon lights and the brave new world. So it's a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. Whatever, it's dystopia, just dystopia with bright lights and loud music.
Yeah, so one of the greatest achievements of Orwell to me is that he documents betrayal, and so when you've got these battles to fight, you need allies. And of course, if you've got allies, you don't want to be betrayed, because that destroys what you're trying to achieve, if you see it. But so as I remember it, I haven't read it for a long time, but Winston, with the male, and Julia, they kind of teamed together, and they were the last human beings left on Earth, shall we say, in this dictatorship. And O'Brien was Big Brother, was it? And he broke everyone, but he hadn't broken Winston and he hadn't broken Julia. But he managed to get Julia eventually to say, "I love Big Brother," which essentially meant that she had betrayed her lover, which was Winston. So, and then eventually,
the man
Winston,
wins.
I think, he betrayed himself. He also said, "I love Big Brother." So this is just, it's a terrible. So they break people's will to live, it seems to me. So what they did in 2020, that was playing into that, trying to destroy people by psychologically torturing them and gaslighting them so that they actually lost the will to live. And I think that's what Orwell described. Well, at least for me, that's what it meant. But I don't know whether I've got the right interpretation, you know. But
No, I think you're right, and who does have the right interpretation? I just raise my eyebrow at Orwell or Huxley because they were Fabians, and Fabians are real, just like they're just slow burn Malthusians. So they all at the end of 1984, the man won. You know, I think if you write a vision of the future and you're just going to accept subjugation at the end of it, well, that's a vision I don't want to be part of. So I'm again, we all see our own heroes and we all see villains, but I think he was a complex guy with a lot of. I don't think a message like that can get out and be so widely accessible, etc., unless it's got a bit of the tongue in cheek and the man in charge wants it to happen. Because the first people who will bring you 1984 will be the BBC and will be the your schooling system and will be the state. The first people to bring you that, to tell you about what subjugation looks like, will be the exact people who are subjugating you at that time.
But it was a brilliant plot. I mean, it was a fantastic story, and so you know, it could have been that it was such a fantastic story that it became so widely read in the end. I think Aldous Huxley was less well read. You know, Brave New World, but arguably I agree that Brave New World is probably nearer to what we are seeing now. But there was something else I wanted to ask you. So it's gone, and of course, as soon as we finish, I'll remember it. Anyway, thank you, Johnny, for speaking to us. And I think it's to me, it's really important talking about Brave New World and 1984, because so many people have read these books, especially in the UK. You know, even now, a lot of people. You can meet a lot of people who've read those two books, and so, and they've got very strong views on them, you know. But maybe some more superficial than others. But then who's right, you know?
Hey, thanks to everybody saying thank you as well, and everybody who's been listening, everybody who's taken some time. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate being listened to. I do live in a world where a lot of the time, a lot of my work is censored and hidden from people. And the fact that you allow me a space to sit and talk so openly and freely, that's like, you know, it's gold dust for me. It's beautiful. And I really want to thank everybody for coming here and being so polite and lovely and having good debate.
Yeah. So, Johnny, can I ask you a question? You don't have to give me the answer that you think I would want. So do you think that it's so I'm getting a bit tired of this group, you know, and finding guests twice a week. It's just like but do you think it serves any purpose?
Yeah, well, of course it does. Of course it does. I think you only realize what things like this do, and the people who are involved in it as well only realize what things like this do once you don't have it, once you don't have that space to speak. And at the moment, we're in between crisis, you could say. You know, there was a moment where we had COVID, and we really needed to hear everybody's voices. All of a sudden, a space like this was extremely important. We're going to go through lots of things. We've been through lots of things. There will be another need for us all to come together and have a conversation. And the more and more prepared we are for that, and for coming together, and for knowing each other's points of view in many different ways already, and know where we stand, that is going to be very useful for what's to come, because it is not going to stop. And there will be another COVID style event very soon, I'm sure. We're all waiting for it. We're all expecting it. So we'll need forums like this, and forums public forums just massively important. I can imagine it is really hard to find speakers so regularly. And the only thing I would say is that you should be on every platform. Like, that's the only thing. I know you're very much on Rumble and maybe a couple other places at the moment, but you know, even the mainstream platforms are starting to open up again. Yes, they censored me as same they censored other people. You could still, if you go onto the Junkermann playlist in my YouTube, it says 6 or 7 videos are unavailable and are hidden. That's not me who's hidden them, that's YouTube who's hidden them from people. So yes, they got their issues, but I think more people who see that there's a group of people who are having these regular discussions, the better. So yes, I think there's a place for this.
So I actually, so we haven't pushed it at all, you know, we haven't advertised it or tried to kind of increase the coverage, but obviously we could do that in the future, because one of the things we have to do is educate the public, you know, because obviously people have got no idea what they're facing. And after talking to so many different people, I think we got closer and closer to the truth. Most of the people who attend regularly, certainly, you know, they understand a lot of the stuff that we wanted to kind of promote at the beginning, but we didn't kind of create the group for that reason. It just happened, you know. I kind of realized that was what I needed to do, and just did it, but not knowing what benefits it might be in the future. But anyway, I have thought, as you said, you know, if we didn't have this group, if we suddenly didn't have it, I think we might miss it, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah. And the potential, because you never know when you've got something up and running, it always has potential, particularly when you haven't pushed anything like we haven't. You know, we're happy with being below the radar, but I think, as you say, you know, there'll be the way things are going, it definitely will happen in the future that we'll need a group like this. And once you've lost the group, it's difficult to you have to start all over again, rebuilding it. It takes a lot of time.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. I can tell you that.
So I think maybe I need to think about it carefully. Got to be careful that you don't kind of ruin your chances in the future. Anyway, thank you so much, Johnny, for speaking to us. Which platforms, by the way, do you think we should, on YouTube and Substack? Those two, yeah?
I like Substack. I think it's really clever. They've geo-blocked a few of my articles, so they still got the same problems. All of these, I mean, even Rumble, they deleted 3 of my articles without telling me. I had to have an argument with the CEO for 6 to 8 months before they put them back up. But that's what happens when you're reporting about stuff that they don't want to hear. You've got to fight your battles individually. Don't. You know, a lot of the people who at the beginning of COVID said, give up on YouTube, turn your back on them. Well, they're now back on YouTube again, because at the end of the day, YouTube isn't going to disappear and normal people are going to go to YouTube. So play it as much as you can. Maybe they'll put a load of strikes against you and kick you off in 2 minutes. You'll only know by trying it, but reaching as many people for when that time comes is important.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very good, Johnny. Thank you so much for speaking to us. I think you're a genius. You're a fantastic speaker. You don't seem to worry at all about kind of forgetting your lines, and somehow or other it comes out fine, I think.
I only talk about what I know, bro. I only talk about what I know. I don't talk about what I don't know.
Yeah, but as you know, if you know a lot about something, you've got so many thoughts going through your head. They're all crashing into each other. The danger is that they crash so violently that you can't remember what you were going to say next. At least
I had a good best friend. I had a good best friend who in 2010, 11 said, yeah, you'd be really good if you didn't and say, you know what I mean so much. And I discovered that I just had to finish sentences and then everybody can understand what you're saying and you think about it better in your mind. I put my best friend, he was the one who actually said, just think about what you're going to say and finish the sentence instead of thinking people have got the gist of it, because that's what a lot of us do.
Sure. Exactly. Very good, Johnny. So we'll send you a copy of this video, you know, so it's still recording now.
Excellent.
And then we'll get the chat to you as well. Charles will send you those, I think. So, but thank you for coming and being so generous with your time. And another thing, you live in South Wales and I live in North Wales. Sometime we must kind of get together.
Yeah, probably in Mid Wales.
Watch a rugby match together or something in Aberystwyth.
Yeah, maybe in the Black
Not that I'm a
Mountains
fan
or
of
something.
Aberystwyth, but it's halfway between us.
No, let's go to Talabont instead. It's much nicer in Brecon. Come on.
All right.
I like it.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much.
Deal. Marv's already asleep. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Night, Marv.